Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Tonight, or today, I should say, rather, we have Bucky Inspired Comprehensivity. And this is a very special treat. We have our friend Struppi that will be back. This is his second time. And he will be leading us through an interactive workshop. And so we get a little bit more of a hands-on approach with these meetups, which is good. Because then we start to actually see the concepts that we talk about so often. So with that, Struppi, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you and welcome to everyone. It's good to be back, and I've been really looking forward to this session for the last couple of weeks. Just because, you know, this is really quite something that I enjoy tremendously. And in the meantime, I've been kind of using up most of my beats again, which is kind of silly, you know, one orders thousands of them at a time, and then a couple of weeks later, it's all gone again, gone into shapes, I suppose. So I'm down to this kind of beats now that I'm going to be using today, which is spilling out there, more or less tiny wooden beats. And yeah, those of you who were around last time, we've been growing last time what I call the eighteyes, which is, where is one? I'm kind of buried in structures right now. Here is an eighteyes. It looks very different from the ones we did last time. That gives you an idea. This is a very different technique to make them, but the overall structure is still an eighteyes. I don't know where I have the one that I made last time. It's buried in the midst of. Here is one. Let's take this. This is like the ones we made last time. So like this one. And this is a kind of a tensegrity structure. All of these ones that I'm doing are tensegrities, and I consider them space-time structures, you know, because synergetic, spherical thinking, all the stuff that gets us here actually shows us how there is no such thing as a space, a static space and a linear time. So what we do have in the universe is space-time, and that's spherical in nature. And all of these structures, all of these, you don't see them, I'm buried in them, as I say. All of these are structures where I do have some kind of beads or pipes or stuff or straws like this, and then a string running through them, tying them into relationships that, due to their triangulation, become structural and then become these beautiful kinds of, all kinds of funky beings and structures, and all kinds of complexities can be done with this. And there is different kinds of variations on these patterns. Like this is for the initiated. You may notice that this has a kind of a tiny little bit difference in the way that the structure is grown, as is this different, because all of these are beads and strings, but it does play a role which way the hole in the bead is pointing, and the which way the connections are drawn. And yeah, all of that is so. And again, it's a bit of a vast playground. And my thought was, now that we've done this eighteyes on the last session, what I would like to offer today would be that we do, it's kind of a choice of your liking. Like my two go-to directions that we can choose from which way to go first would be to either grow the dozeneighteyes, which is this shape, which is also known as icosaops, or the Greek would call it an icosahedron, but the icosahedron couldn't do that. You know, it can't shapeshift, whereas the dozen and eighteyes can very much shapeshift. So that's one choice, and it's almost the same thing to do as we did last time. It's just a different kind of, like the only difference is the number of fingers that we have in every corner, because these have 5 fingers, where the eighteyes from last time only has 4. And the other choice besides that would be to make one of these, which is, I would call this a 2-frequency foureyes. And what this would do is that on one hand we would begin with the simplest of all the shapes, with the foureyes here. So that would be a little bit of a arcing back to the beginning of the thing, because we kind of stepped over this. You know, we went straight into the eighteyes rather than beginning with the foureyes. But now, if we were to grow one of these, we could then look into how to continue growing that into a more complex structure, because there is very many intricacies to this. Like, we could consider growing just a membrane in general, but we could also do it so that the interior structure is given, and so forth. So those were the ideas. Besides that, I also have a little idea for something that we can do perhaps afterwards. If some of you have brought some of these coffee stirrers, we can take a look into triaxial weaving. But first, kind of perhaps we can do like a question of whether you would rather like the foureyes or the dozen eighteyes to do today. And there's no reason why we couldn't do both. It's just we need to begin with one. So that's my question. Do you have a preference? And also related to the whole thing is, do you have anything to share that transpired since we last met? Because some of you, I hope, have been playing with the beads somewhere on their own in the meantime. And I'm just generally curious to see and hear what you have to share about that. Yeah.
So folks, go ahead and type exclamation point in chat to share your experiences, as well as letting Struppi know which structure you would like to start with today. Or if you don't have anything to share, go ahead and just type the structure in the chat, which one you would like to start with, and we can go from there. I haven't had a lot of time to play, Struppi, so I will say that. But
I was playing for you.
Thank you. Very much appreciated.
You got the beads though, Joe. That's a step.
I just got those yesterday, or yeah, literally Friday. So Maritza, I would rather start with, by the way, my vote is the foureyes. Or
the foureyes, this one.
Yeah.
That's a good choice. Both of them are.
Yes, I am undecided. I keep going, I want this one first. No, this one first. I have been playing, Joe, so maybe I've been playing for you also. I have been trial and error in my way through a bunch of different things. I've got half finished skeletons kind of everywhere. I have a bad habit of falling in love with like the one foureyes or something. It's like, oh, that's pretty. Let me just keep doing that. And then it gets away from me. And either I run out of beads or it's not a shape. It is a shape. It's just not what I thought I was doing. So then I start unraveling and redoing, and then it's like 2 a.m. I'm like, oh crap, there's work. So then it goes to a corner. And then when I come back, I'm like, I want to start a new one and I'm going to do better. And then I don't. Sometimes simpler is better. So I really like this little guy here. He's one of my favorites that I've made so far. I don't know if you can see him. He's
lift him up a little. Yeah.
It's 5, it's just two-toned, but I have 5, I guess there are 5 eyes. No, 5 fingers in each corner, right? If it's 5.
I think it's not in each. Some of them have 4.
Oh no, yes, I had to have 4 in order to close it. Right.
Yes.
So I have 2 4s,
Mm-hmm.
and then I have 1, 2, 3, 3 5s.
And 2 4ths on the other side, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's a
So
nice
this
nice
one,
one.
I
Now,
like
if you
this
wanted to
one.
name it, you could go ahead and count the eyes, and then you would know what kind of a many eyes it is. That's kind of a way to do it. But yeah, that's awesome.
I've been playing with this. I've been playing with the, like, so yesterday I followed along your video and made the long ones. And then today I followed your video halfway and went rogue. Still don't know yet what that one's gonna look like. It's still a work in progress.
That's good. Yeah, wonderful. Jeannie, you were posting something in the chat, I think, and you showed something in the video too. That's nice.
Irregular.
Yes, clearly. Funky. It's a funkahedron, funk ops. All right. Well, I don't know about all the rest, but we can just go from here. So, Jeannie, did the one that you wrote? It's not quite clear. Dodecahedron. I think you meant dodecahedron, which is not something of the ones that I was showing, but perhaps you mean this one. Yes? Okay. So the Greek name again of this is icosahedron. Icosa meaning 20. And since I play with dozenal numbers, with the base 12, if you think of a clock, you know, the first 12 hours is 12, and then the next dozen, that's like a dozen and 1, a dozen and 2, and if you go all the way to 8, that's the same as 20, right? So a dozen and 8 is 20, which is why I call this a dozen and 8 eyes, which also has some super fascinating overtones, if you like, because when looking at these relationships in terms of decimal numbers, you know that the numbers often seem somewhat random or meaningless sometimes. Whereas looking at them dozenally, you know, we have the 4eyes, we have the 8eyes, then we have the dozen and 8eyes, which then once the jitterbug dance of the Tao goes all the way out, turns into the 2 dozen and 8eyes. And that, when it gets completed, complemented, turns into this, which is the 2-frequency 8eyes. And if I'm not mistaken, this is out of the top of my head, but I think this is also 2 dozen 8eyes. Whereas the inverse of the vector equilibrium, or 2 dozen 8eyes, so the inverse of this one, inside out, is this one, which is 2 dozen around 8eyes. So yeah, that's my kind of play with the names of these things. But let's try this one then. So to say something more about this structure, the members, like the fingers, the vectors in this, is 2.5 dozen. So the 2 dozen is 24, plus a half a dozen, plus 6 is 30. So we need 30 beats at minimum. Now, because I don't have many of these left, I'm going to be playing with these tiny beats. So I'm going to be doing the thing that last time around we had watched Maritza doing, of having a higher frequency in the finger, which is to say, which is a good example of that here, like this. See, this is a little play on it. This is also kind of grown from a dozen 8eyes, but it's a little longer. There's some corners with 6 fingers in the middle, but just half of this is like the dozeneighteyes. But in this case, I have 2 beads for every vector, for every finger. Somewhere in there, in my bag of goodies, I do have an example of what the same thing looks with only a single bead for every finger, because that again looks very differently. But I think what I'm gonna do is go with a 2 frequency finger, so I'll have 3 beads for each finger, which is really not so important for any of you. It's just for me that I know every time I speak of a finger, which is one side of a triangle, in my case, that is to say a unit of 3 beads. And other than that, what I'm gonna use is my string. And again, I'm using this cotton string. I think I'm gonna go with the white one. I think the black one wouldn't work too well on the video. So I'll take some length of that. And the other thing that I'm gonna be using, I think, is I'm gonna make some needles from my wire, or I still have some, but in case one of you needs a needle and hasn't created one yet, I'm gonna make one nevertheless. So just to give you an idea, because this is a thin kind of wire that I'm using, and I'm taking a length that is longer than the fingers that I want to go through, at least twice as long plus a little. And let's do it. I'm just gonna take a length of the wire. Oh, don't let go of the end of the wire. That was not intended. Anyways, here, I'm gonna cut that off, just not the microphone cable, just the length of that wire, like that. And then I fold it in half so that it turns into something where I have the both of the ends together. And I'm going to take a plier and twist the ends together a couple of times. I used to do sorry. I used to do this with a knot in the end, which works. However, it increases the diameter of the needle quite a bit, which in some cases with some materials and beads doesn't work too well. So I'd rather use this twisting thing now. It does tend to untwist sometimes, but then you just twist it again. And with that, I have this thing where I have a length of wire, trying to find a place in my video where you can see it well. I've got a bend on one side, so it's twice doubled up all the way to this end where I've twisted the ends together there. And that is kind of a nice, very useful tool for this kind of play. All right, now I've got my 2 of these wire needles, and I've got my length of string, and I'm gonna put both ends of my line through one end per needle, but I'm gonna put on both needles. Again, when we're doing a simple structure like a 4eyes or even an 8eyes, there's ways of doing the whole thing with just one direction of the thread. I've accomplished it a couple of times, but what we're doing here with the 2 directions, I think, is a lot more general and a lot more useful in general for all of these structures, because the pattern is the same whatever kind of structure we're using. All right, so that's kind of my check-in on you for now is, do you all have a length of string with 2 needles, or if you don't need needles because you can thread the thread through the beads without, that's also good. Just give me a heads up. DIJ, what's up? Is it LJ? LJ, DLJ.
Yeah, DLJ is good. Thanks. Sorry, yeah, because I didn't come last time, so I didn't know what to expect. I have no material, but I'll just watch.
Brilliant. That's fine. We're doing this kind of for ourselves, but also for anyone who likes to take a look. I did watch the last session and it was quite fun, because in the beginning I kind of said, yeah, it's not gonna take too long, you know, it's just a couple minutes when I do it. And then we sat there for 2 hours or so, because of course a lot gets lost in translation when we're doing this remotely. But nevertheless, we did make it work. And I think that's the important bit. Like, even though we are as remote as we are, the bit of connection that we have here is already enough to transmit the weightless metaphysical knowledge of what the pattern is doing. So that's the game here, is playing that. All right. Anyone else? Everyone else good? Good to go? I see some nodding and a muted Joe.
Yeah, let me see your wire again.
You take a length
Okay,
of
how long?
wire. How long
Yeah,
is depends.
Mine's pretty long. That's all.
Yeah, that's fine. Like, you're gonna use the wire itself for the whole thing, or are you using it for the
Needle.
needle? I
Yeah,
mean,
the needle. I should use
you,
it for the whole.
if you do, it's fine. If you do use it with the string, I think it's gonna work. It's just gonna be more of a, you know, as much tension as you put into the thing, it's still gonna be flexible and squishy. But that's something with the beats that's generally true. Like, here is an example of one of these structures that I made yesterday. This is also a dozen and eighteyes, but of straws, paper straws. And I used it to string up a structure here in the middle, which is kind of like Indra's web. And I don't know if that shows on the video at all, but I did show it on other videos. And the membrane in here, which actually sounds, because it's under so high a tension, is the same membrane that we find around the vector equilibrium. So it's this. Oop. Like this one.
Okay.
Right, which does the dance of the Tao. But in this case, in this thing, it's just strings and beats in the corners. But anyways, this one is really quite tightly tuned and very strong and does not really like to shapeshift too much. But you see, when you do it with the beats, unless you do it with wire, which usually don't last forever because they do not like to be bent back and forth in too much in the corner, so they do tend to break some after a while. So if we're doing it with string, then it's gonna be somewhat flexible and shape-shifting. That's just the nature of it, and I think that's actually a very good thing to keep in mind, that in a way this is true for all matter. You know, there is a little give and take and a little flexibility in everything. It's just, if we're looking into the scale of like atomic or, you know, molecular play with these shapes, or even subatomic, then the tension and the speed at which things are moving in a very tiny space are so high that the resulting thing is just really strong and seems to be unmoving, right? It has the appearance of solidity, which is why the Greek thought of these things as solids. But even a crystal is moving. It's just moving too fast in too small a space for us to notice, right? So never mind that it's gonna be a little wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey in the end. But that's cool. So I hope we're all set. And just to be sure again, to make this structure, if one is using a single beat for every finger, then you need 2.5 dozen, which is 30 beats. If you take 2 beats for every finger, then again, it's 60, 5 dozen. And since I'm gonna go with 3 beats for every finger, I'm gonna have 7.5 dozen, which is 84, 90 beats. Yes. So I'm gonna be using 90 beats, and I think this is enough what I've got here. So I'm gonna just begin with that. Just a quick thought, because there's one thing that I wanted to mention after watching the last session about the relationship of what it is that we're doing and what we call geometry, right? Because if we look in at the patterning, at the technique that we're using here, experientially, looking at what is going on evidently, and we speak to that somewhat synergetically, then we find something about it where I'm gonna just to demonstrate this, I'm gonna use this bead. And this is one of the ones that you saw me use last time around. So now, right now, it's just a bead, right? It's a piece of wood with a drilled hole through. And as such, it's on its own. It's its own member. It's its own whole thing. But what happens if I put my string through this, my line through this? I have a happening where the line goes into the bead. That's happening number 1. It then goes through the bead. That's kind of happening number 2, and number 3 is coming out of the bead on the other side, right? So that's very good to keep in mind, because what we've done is we've drawn a connection. We've drawn a connection between 2 happenings, and the connection itself is a happening in its own, right? And in synergetics, what we call a vertex or a vortex or a corner or a star, or I like to call them hearts, those are happenings. Event happenings is what Bucky calls it. So, whether we do have a sphere present that we can look at and see, it's a sphere, or just the happening of the line goes into the bead, it's the same thing. That line going into the bead is the center of a sphere of a happening of the line going into the bead. Okay, so that's how, if we're drawing geometry on a piece of paper, right, what happens is we begin the line, we put the pen down, that's happening number 1, then we draw the trajectory of the line, and then we lift it, or we go around a corner or something. So there's happening 1, 2, and 3, right? And this is what the line is about. The line is the connection between the 2 happenings. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of bring that to our attention, because I think it helps tremendously to make sense of what goes on. Because if we do have something like this here, this is one of these structures, and we can see in every one of the corners there is the lines showing up as they get into what we could call critical proximity. They get as close together as they possibly can before happening to turn around, turn the direction. And this one is nice. This is a 3-frequency 4eyes. And this shows us the kind of corners where we have the 3 lines. I hope you can see. There's 3 lines between the beads. These corners here along the edge, they have 3 lines between these 3 fingers and 3 between those. So altogether there's 6. And then we have these, which are almost, this is half of a sphere already. And one can see how many things are happening in that place, And once we get a bead, or no, a vertex that is completely enclosed, then we have the 12 around 1, which is the vector equilibrium. So like this here, this is the vector equilibrium, and the beats, or no, the lines in the middle there that we can't see because it's inside, they are doing exactly the same pattern that these triangles are doing on the outside, just on the inside. And that's a full sphere. Like a full sphere is these, yeah, is that complex of jumps between the vectors pointing in. Here, perhaps this goes to show that a bit better. Here it's just the radii of the same structure, and the lines outside go kind of wild and freely, but they are doing exactly the same pattern that is mirrored on the inside of this. And that's something we find in every completely enclosed vortex or sphere within this space-time matrix, you know, the what Bucky called the isotropic vector matrix, where isotropic, everywhere the same. It's a vector matrix because all these fingers are force lines. They go both ways, and it's a matrix. It's a womb. It's the womb of universe, really, the womb of space-time, because even the big vast seemingly empty vacuum, so-called vacuum of space, is completely awash in light. It's just, you only see it along the radii, and the rest of it is kind of out of tune. It's more of a gravitational thing then. All right. That's me just pointing out the obvious. Just a couple of words to get us going, I suppose. But
No,
yes, please.
No, it's actually interesting because we were just chatting, and the DLJ just recently gave a presentation, basically on event process management, how we learn, and all these different concepts. But he talked about how we intake information and how it comes output, and how the loops work together to reinforce our learning and create a structure. Is that correct there, DLJ? Did I capture that somewhat?
You're a good student. Very good.
Thank you. Thank you. The loops are happening. The loops are happening. So that's
it. Yeah, that's also true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
the
nutrients, cues, signals, and that leads to the body and mind. And it's almost like you're creating a structure that has not a mind, but a biological mind, but it does have a mind of its own.
Indeed. And this is something I really want to kind of communicate well, is that since the whole self is not just inside of a body, but inside and outside of a body.
Right.
We see that universe as such, as the whole of the whole, the whole inside and outside and everything around, is, Alan Watts would always say that you can't grow figs on a you can't grow figs on a thistle is the word, I think, right? Like you wouldn't get what we call intelligent life, or life for that matter, in a universe that wasn't alive, right? So universe itself is alive. Every body in universe is alive, and that's why I speak of these structures as animatter, as animate matter. And in my mind, even a rock that seemingly doesn't do much except existing on their own frame of time and, growing somewhere and moving along and shaping and whatever, even a rock has a consciousness, because if we knock on the rock to ask for its inside, it's gonna sound, it's gonna have some kind of reaction to that knock. And that is a very simple, but nevertheless a kind of consciousness. And turns out it's really difficult to go around, you know, calling something alive and something else not alive, because existence itself is aliveness, right? So even the most desolate desert, for instance, is still a living thing. It's just living the life of a desert, which looks a bit different than perhaps a wetland. But I think this is a very broad frame of mind where we can accommodate all kinds of variants and variations, because we can shift the focus and we can redraw the boundaries that we tune into. And as we do that, let's go ahead and draw some boundaries.
No, just really quickly, I think
Yes.
that what you're making is like a really incredible point, because actually something that during the presentation, and it's good to draw parallels between these, is this idea that, DLJ talked about holism and not necessarily being reductionist, and saying that the sum is greater than the sum is greater than the whole of the part. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Yes.
So, he actually provided a pretty interesting example of that, but it also goes to Bucky's ideas as where he has, when you have two tetrahedron that can come together, how the whole is greater than the what is it? 2 and 2 is 5, I believe.
It's kind of like this one. Okay, now we're sidetracking. I'm sidetracking with you.
But yeah,
this is
it's interesting.
This is a recent model I've come to create, and like this, it kind of looks like an eye, right? It's a triangle, a left angle. But if I turn it a little, it turns into this, and it's already okay. Maybe it's two triangles, right? But in a way, it's already more than that, because it's holding together, so there's some layers going on. So let me untangle this a little, and I'm just gonna undo these buttons that are what I call fingertips, beads on the ends of the fingers. And as I do that, we have now these two triangles with extra 3 legs on the corners, right? Now, if I take one of these, and I'll just do this back so that it seems to be just a triangle, right? We have a triangle. Now let's double the members, and we have 6 here, and I'll just grab them like this and give them a twist. And this gives us the 4eyes, right? So what was 2 triangles a second ago is now 4 triangles, evidently. So that's synergy.
Right. That's 1 and 1 is 4, right?
Exactly. And here is
so that's
another
the
one.
same thing he was saying with 2 and 2 is 5 in his presentation. It was very interesting to see.
Right, and here is a second one, and we can do the same thing, and it's just another 4eyes. And each one of these has a volume of 1 quantum. But what happens if we bring those two together, if we have these two synergize? So I'll open them again, and I'll just plug the fingertip of one into the corner of the eye of the other here. And then I go one step further, and it's gone undone. I have a little bit too little tension on this, I'm afraid. Let's see, maybe I can do it if I don't force it. Needs some tensioning. Facelift. Okay, we're good. See, I'm just going around, taking the finger from one side and putting its fingertip into the corner of the eye on the other side. And as we go around, these 2 4eyes that we had a minute ago, with a volume of 1 each, turn into this, which is the 8eyes, which is just a, 2 times 4 is 8. So the number of triangles doesn't surprise us in this case, but the volume may, because the volume of this is 4, where individually they had each a volume of 1, right? And we add them and they get a volume of 4. So there's again synergy at play. It's again a hands-on, a real life example of why something that is whole is
Right.
always intrinsically more
In
than
the sum.
what we have when we take it apart. And
That's
I
right.
think that's something of a nitpicking thing about the sentiment of the whole is more than the sum of its parts. But it's important, I think, to keep in mind that the whole is before the part. Right? A part is something that we only get once we take a whole and take it apart. We never find anything in the universe that is a part. Just like, ooh, look, there's a part of a tree. There's a branch growing in the air or something. It's a whole tree, and we can take it apart, and then any particular part has its own wholeness and stuff. But to go around and get a grasp of universe as such, we have to kind of think of the whole first, because then we can keep the whole in mind and add to it in any particular direction that we want to, but we never have to go less than whole, right? Jeannie.
How about the sperm and the egg?
Well, that's another kind of synergizing. And there's a lot of complex play going on, but it certainly is a coming together of two wholes, which are less than any whole in their body of origin, insofar as they only have half of the genetic code each. But that, again, is a whole set of code. It's just half of the doubled set that we usually have in a whole cell. So it's no problem to have half of that and still have it be whole enough to be useful once we synergize this with another, right? It's kind of like if you think of the whole cell of the eukaryote, the multicellular organism as an eighteyes, then to reassemble this eighteyes into a new organism, we take half an eighteyes from one, which is a foureyes, and half an eighteyes of the other, which is a foureyes. Both together are these tiny cells. I mean, one is considerably larger than the other, the one with all the rest of the information, epigenetics and so forth, the egg. But we could generalize and say, now we have them both in foureyes, and those are coming together, synergizing into a new organism, which has, again, a full set. But we don't find just a strand of DNA running wild, looking for an egg. It's a whole cell of a spermatozoa going, right? It's got its own wholeness, its own integrity, its own membrane and all that. But anyways, we're getting closer to growing our structure, and perhaps as a teaser, this is the very structure that is generally speaking, the most used in what we find in the viral realm of life in the universe, because most of the viruses have this as the basic structure for their capsid, which is the thing that the genes are traveling in to be safe once they're out of the host. All right, let's go ahead. Let's grow something. So I'm gonna begin by growing a triangle, and a triangle is 3 fingers. And so if I say that for me on this round, every finger is 3 beads, then 3 fingers is 9 beads. So I'm gonna put on 9 beads on my string. Incidentally, 9 is 3/4 of a dozen. Always good to keep that in mind. All right, and number 3. Now I'm going to move my beads somewhere roughly to the middle of my line here. And as of yet, this is not actually showing us anything special about what is going to happen next, right? This is just beads on a string. They're free to move, nothing peculiar. When I take out the tension, they do wibble and wobble. If I put tension on it, they straighten out. But to turn it into a triangle, we do close the loop, right? So if I segment this into its 3 fingers, we have these 3 sets of 3. Each one is a finger. And what I'm doing now is that I take one end of the line. I'm going to take this end of the line, and I'm going to feed it into where the other line comes out. I'm going to go in here on this side. And I think I'm going to have to let my cat in.
Good, because I got a problem with my
Yeah, she's crying.
spring.
I'm going to let her in. Just this first one, so that I have the sense of that we've actually gone somewhere already. First step. Okay, now that I can open this again a little. We see here, now we have a loop, and both ends of the line come out of the 3 beads on the top, out of 1 finger, and then they go through the others. And as I put tension on this, this actually draws close and becomes what is not clearly a triangle yet, unless I straighten out the edges a little, like so. And then it's a little tiny eye. All right? And I'll just give you all a second to get there, and I'll get the cat in the meantime. Wah! Oops. Making some noise as I go. Okay. Okay, perhaps she wants some snack. Kitty, kitty, kitty. You're on the mic. We're not muted. Oh, but at least the camera dropped, so you don't have a video feed. Okay. Oh, did you bring a flea? How kind of you. Ah, kinship earth, you know, wherever we turn, we always find more kin. There's the cat. Okay. Here's the little Indra's web. All right, enough of that. I'm gonna go get seated again. Whoop. Now I can go ahead and disentangle this. But I think it should, yeah, it's okay. We're safe, we're good, all good, cool. Have you accomplished your first eye, Joe? I see one with Jeannie and Maritza. Oh, nice, nice beats. You know what? I'm gonna add some more beats. I'm gonna go with 4 beats for every finger, because then it's a dozen in a triangle and it's a little bigger, so you see a little more of it. Because this is gonna be so tiny otherwise. But that's no problem. I'll just retrace 1 step of my line, and then I'll add 3 more beats. So every finger has 1 more. And then each finger has 4 beads. Okay, here 1, 2, 3.
So you're adding 4?
Well, I'm just I had 9 beads already on the string, and that's 3 for every finger. I want 4 now for every finger, so I've added 3 to the whole thing. And now I'm considering every set of 4 beads to be 1 finger, 1 vector of my triangle here. So that's gonna be a little bigger. I think I can actually put my finger through that, which is always cool.
Can we still do them with 2?
Sure, you can do 2, you can do 1.
Okay, I was following your 9. I was like, I'd rather do. Yeah, I'd rather do your 2.
Yeah, sure. If you did only 1, that would also work. It would just look very differently in the end. That's the subfrequency thing that we spoke of last time. But yeah, whatever you do, you know, it's
Well, I
just
started.
whatever number you choose, you just go with yours. And that's why I speak of the fingers, irrespective of the number of beats. On the other hand, as you've got those long beats, right? Those aren't really spherical. I would actually suggest you just take one beat for every finger. That's in the case of the shape that you have, that's a lot more helpful, I think, and makes it a lot easier.
I agree.
So you just have one beat for every finger.
Sounds good to me.
Still tuning in. Tune in next week.
There we go. All right, now I got it.
This looks fun. If I turn these like so, the one eye looks like a pair of eyes. We're getting there. We're almost at a pair already. A third of the way, so to speak. You good?
Yep. My needle came off.
Oh no! That happens.
I'm gonna use
to
my
me.
old string.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and go on with the next triangle because so far so good. So I'm gonna add, because I'm already coming out of one finger here, to make another triangle I need only two. So I'm gonna add 2 fingers to one end of the line. So for me that's 4 beats times 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. And another. And once you do this more often, you may find that it's really fantastic that our fingertips can pick and feel specific numbers of beats. Like if I put my fingers in here, I can feel that it's 4 that I pick or 3 that I pick. You know, I don't know up to which number that works, perhaps 5 or 6, but it's really cool. Jeannie, yes.
Are we adding beads to both ends of the string?
No, we're adding two fingers worth of beads to one end of the string. Oh, yes. Right, and I'll show you what that looks like on my side. Here is the first 4 that I've got in my triangle, plus 2 sets of 4. And then once I've got that, I'll take the other end of the line and make ends meet and feed that end of the line into that opposite finger, like it's coming out of this here and it's going in here on the other side, but only through the last finger. Okay, so in my case it's going through 4 of the beads. Okay, and then I draw on that, and as I do, I open another eye, drawing that closest. And
So I have 3.
that's what it looks like. Show me
right now.
Can you
3.
lift it up so that it's on screen?
Oh, is it not on the screen?
It's a little too low.
Too high?
A little higher, a little higher. Yes. Ah, that's great. Yes, you've got a pair of eyes.
Yeah, I got, yeah, 3 eyes.
Jeannie also has a pair of eyes. Yes. See, Jeannie is doing 2 beats for every finger, so her triangle looks like a hexagon.
Yeah, using this string, it did not
It's
work.
great. Yeah. Ah, always with the finding the good things together.
Exactly.
Maritza, you're good, I suppose.
So I cheated, and so I went ahead. So now I'm just thinking of starting a new one so I can follow along. I
how
have
far?
I have my first 5, my first little
Okay.
flower.
Yeah, but
So I
if
was
you,
gonna wait till you got there.
yeah, if that's fine, we're all on our way to get there. So if you can hold on for a second, or just begin a second one on the side, so you grow
That's what I
2
was
at
doing.
once.
Yep.
Sure, why not? Okay, so you may remember what we're doing here is that now that we're in this kind of place, we have an imbalance, right? What we're looking at all the time with this kind of technique is we're looking at the 2 corners that we're coming out of with the thread, with the line, and we are counting the fingers that gather in the corners, right? So on this side of my structure, I've got 2 fingers pointing at this corner. On this side, it's 3. So in a way, I would call the 3 the heavier side. It's got more mass to it. And the 2 is the lighter side. And if I look at this, let me pick up this one. This is kind of what we're doing currently, where we've begun with the first triangle, and then we've added a second, and we've got our pair of eyes where we're now. And then we're kind of turning in a circle, right? Like this. And what is the heavy side is the side where the center of our circle is, right? That's the place where our compass is stuck in the paper. While the light side is kind of the playing leg, the one that steps around in the circle. And you can see how I can add one and another and another and another. All the way around is 6. And the beauty of what we're doing here is that the number of fingers that comes together in the corner shapes the topology of the structure, right? What we now want for our structure is the 5 fingers like this. Last time we did 4, which is the corner of an 8-eyes, like this.
Mm-hmm.
If we only did 3, which we might if we ever get to the 2-frequency 4-eyes, then we have a 4-eyes, right? Less than 3 is just a triangle. And we want 5, right? So we've already got 3 in our case here, because the heavy side, the one that we're turning around, has already 3 fingers. That's still 2 fingers short for what we want. So let's add another triangle, and we are adding on the light side where there's only 2 fingers. All right, so on the light side, I'm gonna add 2 fingers on the string.
On the one with the 2 strings coming out, correct?
On the one side of the string where there's 2 fingers pointing at the corner.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then for me, again, that's a total of 8 beats added, because I need 2 fingers and every finger has 4 beats. There. And once I've got that, it looks kind of like this, right? I've got my pair of eyes, and on the right hand side I've got 2 more fingers. So I'll take the heavy side of the line, the inside, and I'll feed that line back in where the other end comes out, right? So I'm making ends meet again. And I'll just go through one finger which is 4 beats for me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
If you go through one finger for me, it would just be one, right?
Yes. Exactly. That's why I, again, we could call the fingers vectors. That would be closer to what Bucky called them. But I really like the terminology of a finger. It's kind of nice because it's pointing 2 ways and all the way around the eye. And it's a shorthand for us. So we're independent of whichever number of beats any one of us has for one finger, we can speak of a finger and know what we mean. Okay? Show me what you've got, Joe. Because I would almost think... Can you lift it up a little more? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not secure though. It's just...
No, that's because of the flexibility in the line. Can you lift it up a little more? So that it's right in front of the camera and I can see it? Oh, look, you've already got 4 triangles. And with the last 2, you've actually turned the direction. Like if you, do I have I did bring the magnets somewhere. I think they maybe not, I don't know. Okay, so I think, Joe, can you try again once more, hold it up a little? Just pull on the string and the rest I will see what it is. Just bring it all into, yeah. So the last one is already turning the other way because on the eye before the last, which was the third of the ones that you're doing, you've put the 2 on the inside and went with the outside through. So when you look at mine here, just take off the last 2 beats that you've got, the 2 brown ones, and then we're a little closer back together. Jeannie, yours looks great. Like on this here, I've got 3 triangles, and the finger that I'm in is still one of the radii of this corner here, right? It's one of the fingers pointing at that corner. If I had done 2 fingers on the inside and went through 1 on the outside, then I would be where Joe is. I think Joe is on this finger here, on this side, right, which is a circumferential finger rather than a radius, right? So what you would need to do now to just get back on track is to first perhaps take the you want to go into the radius with both lines, right? So you trace one back 1 step and get the other one into following that beat.
So go back 1 step through here.
No, not adding another beat. We're still getting you to where we are.
Okay.
Okay. All right. You see, now you're coming with both ends of the line, you're coming out of a finger, right?
Right.
And that finger is part of a triangle, right?
Yes.
And one side of the triangle is already the common side with the rest of the structure that you've grown.
Yes.
And the other, the third one of those, that's the one that you want to get in. That's the one line like this one that is here. It's a radius of this circle that we're drawing. We're going around this circle.
Okay.
And you want to be on the radius of that. I would so love to just be in a room with all of you, and
yeah,
it would be so much easier. But I hope everyone else. I only I've limited my screen here to the ones who are showing the video, so I only got 4 of us here. But all the rest of you, I appreciate you being here and hanging out, and it's a lot. more fun and less confusing. Well, is it less confusing? It's a lot more confusing when you're doing it yourself. But it's all good. We've got all time and we can do it. We just need to be clear that we're not getting lost along the way, because it's very easy to get lost when we don't yet know the pattern.
Yes.
Because once you know the pattern, there's ways in which you can get lost that actually help you find a way. You know, there's cheats and stuff, but we're trying to get to knowing the pattern first, and then we can do the funky stuff. Right, Jeannie? Funky Hydra? Okay. So have you managed, Joe? Have you?
I took the one off.
Okay. How does it look now?
Well, I'm down to like that, and then I'm adding 2 in, right?
Just lift it up, or take it back a little so that it's in screen, in view. Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes. Now you've added these 2. If you look at where the string is coming out of, if you just put the 2 on the side that you've just added, if you don't mind those 2 right now, and you just look at the one bead of the structure that you've already assembled, that you're coming out of, that one bead, you've added the 2 beads. Let's put it simply. You've added the 2 beads on the other side of the line. You wanted to add these 2 to the other.
To the other. Okay.
Yes. That's the outside, the light side.
You want to go inside. Okay.
Joe, what helped me last time Struppi was saying, when you look at it, the heavy side is the one with more beads dangling. That's not the side you want to put them on. You put it on the other side.
Yeah, right now.
So you see there? You have one where there's all the beads dangling.
If you put it down in front of you, you see how you are always looking for the places where the line comes out of the bead, right? Those are the 2 corners that you're looking at. You're coming out of one bead, and the lines are in 2 corners, and then you can look how many beads are collecting in one of the corners and how many are in the other. Right? And if you do that on your case, you find on one side there's 3 beads pointing at the corner, on the other it's 2.
Right.
All right, now we're clear on that. The 3 has more mass, right?
Right.
The 2 is lighter, and that's the outside of the circle. And we're adding 2 beads to the outside, to the lighter side. Okay? And then you take the inside and make ends meet and go back through that last of the beads into where the other line comes out.
Very good. Okay.
And I'm going to read what A2 wrote. Interesting, listening and watching, even though I cannot actually participate. Very thought-provoking when you were commenting about whether or not you could recognize how many beads you have in your hand, 2 versus 3 versus 4, or etc. And at one point, can you no longer determine how many you are holding? Indeed, I think, I mean, just trying this here, up to 4 is really simple. That's like the fingers know that it's 2 sets of 2. I don't know if I can do 6. Probably not. Well, this is 6, but maybe random chance and not 5. Perhaps I can, but I'm sure that I can do up to 4 without a problem. And that's another one of these beauties of when you do, if you do choose to, and consider using more dozenal numbers in your life, so thinking more in terms of dozen than in terms of 10, you find that if you have dozen, a whole, a whole is a dozen, then you can count members of that by going, okay, I'm going in 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, a dozen. You can pick 3, and then it's 3, 6, 9, a dozen. You can take 4, it's 4, 8, a dozen. You can take 6, and then it's 6 and a dozen, right? And all of those are very nice numbers because you can, whether or not you can pick 6 with your fingertips is a different thing, but you can look at 6 and you see it's 6. You don't need to count them, right? So up to 6, I'm pretty sure, is a range of numbers where we can look at a glance and see the number rather than counting it. And after 6, it gets a little more complex. 7 is cool because it's 6 around 1. And after that, the shapes get more and more complex. But all the way up to 6, it's really kind of like looking and knowing the number. And that's really interesting, in lower levels of, or deeper levels of consciousness, I suppose. All right, Joe, how is it? Yes, you've got a tough luck with those beats and that string. That combination is really...
Yeah, it's not, no, it doesn't look like it, but it is.
But it is. It does actually look like it. It just looks like those beats and that string. That's all. Okay, but now this is again we're back at this place, and now again we're just counting, looking at the 2 corners that the string comes out, the line comes out. One of the corners here has 2 fingers, and the other has 4. Right? Is that okay? Do we agree on that? I see some nodding. I agree with it. And since we decided we want to make the dozeneighteyes, which has 5 fingers, we're still 1 finger short. So we just repeat the last step. We take the outside line, which is the lighter one, where there's only 2 fingers. We add 2 fingers to that line, and then make ends meet, close the loop, and have the other line go through the last one of those 2 fingers. While I was doing the video yesterday that Maritza used to make her structure, which made me very happy to learn that you did. In that video, I realized somewhere along the way that what I'm doing here when I'm recounting the steps and repeating the same words again and again and again, make ends meet, putting 2 fingers here, going through that. It's kind of almost like we could call it a rhythm or an algorithm, or consider it a song, maybe it's more of a rap than a song. I could sing it more, but it's almost like a song. It's the song of the spheres, if you like, right? And if we know that song, we can grow all of these structures. That's pretty nice. Okay, long story short, I've added my 2 fingers to the outside line, as you can see here. 2 on the outside, and I take the inside line, which is coming, going through the last beat, making ends meet, going in where the other comes out.
Closes the structure.
Come again?
It closes, but barely, like the way my beads are.
Yeah.
Not well.
No, but it's got a tendency to twist somewhat, which is because of the nature of the 5ness and everything. And there is a tendency in this already to go tetrahelix. So it's not you, it's the nature of universe. But that's what we're doing this for, to experience that, because it's super interesting what universe is doing when it's minding its own business. And when we're minding along, we can learn a lot. All right, with that, if I look at my corner here, I'm coming currently, I'm coming out of this finger, right? It's pointing at this corner which has 2 fingers, so it's a light side again. On the other corner here, where it's pointing at, the inside, has 5 fingers, which is what we need. All right, so if that is 5 and that is what we need, we can close that corner. And to close that corner, we take the inside line, the one on the heavy side, and we we've this is still a little bit of a stretch for me to phrase this so that it's clear. We're going in to, like, considering that one corner that we're turning around there. It's kind of like the last beat that we moved through, that's the last finger pointing at that corner. And if we go all the way around, there's the first finger pointing at the corner. And there's still a connection missing between these two. All the other connections are in place. So we're drawing that connection now. We're taking the inside string and feeding it back through that first finger of the corner, which is also a radius. And as we follow the radius outwards, we're gonna be ending up with both of our lines on the outside. And this is a crucial moment because for once, we do not have a single beat that we have on the string actively, but actually two fingers, like so. I'm coming out of these two fingers now. Oh, look at that. That's pretty. Awesome, Kitty. Yay. I love it. Okay.
Oh, I wanted to
This-
say, crows
Funky though.
count to 7.
Sorry, that was too much at once. Joe, I'm gonna take care of you in a second. Jeannie, what?
Crows can count to 7.
Oh, wow. Well, then they got the dozen down, I suppose. Give them 2 times 6 and they're good. All right, Joe, can you show me again? I think there was some confusion happening there. Or maybe it's just a...
It's the way
Sometimes
they're structured.
the string gets
Yeah, it's
caught
getting-
up on another thing. Okay. Can you lift it up? Because... Okay, this is a bit of a more complex situation. The last thing you did is definitely a mistake. So that last beat that you added, you can just
Yeah.
take off.
So it went from the outside though, right, to the inside.
No, I was in this finger, which is one of the radii, and I took the inside line, which is on the heavy side, this one, and I moved it out of this finger, out through this finger, on the other side here. You can perhaps see the connections with the lines, and the one gap that is big right now, that's the one that I've got active because this triangle is not yet closed. I've got 2 fingers on the line.
Okay. So I dropped
Okay.
that.
Yeah, and show me again, and I'll try to
It's
diagnose.
back to the old structure. It's back to
Lift
the
it
old
up.
structure.
It almost feels like you've got a bit of a twist in there somewhere, where perhaps the string got looped around some beats somewhere. That sometimes happens, particularly with the kind of materials that you've got working there. They do kind of catch on sometimes, because that's really a bit confusing to me right now. I'm trying to make sense of it. It would help if
Yeah,
I
it's
could see it.
It's hard to.
Yeah, you've got to find your camera, I can tell you. Okay, so from the looks of it, that's right next to the camera. That's the camera. Okay, what is going on? I think there is a loop somewhere caught. Can you turn it a bit?
I think Joe's going for
And
kind of-
keep it in frame. This is the hardest meetup ever for you.
I think Joe's going for a gain of function.
Yeah, but you see, there's the tangle. It's visible on this side now. Like it's kind of like a few of the beats went through one of the eyes. If you turn it around so that you can look at the side that you're showing us right now,
Yes.
then you may see that there is like a couple of places where you can see the line running outside of the beats. Do you see that?
Yes.
So there's a situation where 2 of the beads or so have turned through one of the triangles, and therefore it's kind of like a knot in the triangle. So you want to untangle that somehow. Okay, can you make that work?
I could try.
Yeah. That's all we can ask for. Maritza, how are you doing? Have you finished the first?
Waiting because I have a question.
You guys want to
I
go
just was
ahead?
trying not to go too
You guys want to go
far. So
ahead? Go ahead.
is it
Well,
5, and then 4?
well, for the dozen and 8eyes, that's one of the basic structures of space-time, and all of these, there's 3 basic structures. There's 4eyes, 8eyes, and dozen 8eyes, and all of them have in common the one criterion that the number of fingers for every corner is the same. Okay, so if you want to make a dozen 8eyes, all you need to know is, you don't even need to know how many corners there is. They're just gonna appear. All you need to make sure is that in the end you have 5 fingers around every corner. And then there is
okay.
no other way than to have it be a dozen 8eyes.
So I'm using 2 different types of beads. And when I use this one, it almost looked like it wanted to be 4 there to close up. And I was like, is it supposed to be 4?
No,
So no,
you
it's
want
supposed to be
5.
5. Okay.
Yes.
This one looks really pretty with the longer bead over here. It's really pretty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now that I know they're all 5, I'll keep going.
Keep a lookout. Okay, Joe, have you recovered?
I'm back to my 3 triangles, and I'm
That's great.
willing to let you guys go on.
No, show it. You know, this is why we're doing this together. It's no need to hurry, and I really want us to all get along, you know. All right. So I suppose, can you show me by pointing your finger which hand of yours is your right hand?
This one.
Okay, so on your right hand side, that's the side of the finger where you're coming out, where you have the heavy side of the line.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So you see the very top bead there.
Yep.
That's right showing now. Yeah, that's the one side. That's where you're coming out. And on the other side, in your right hand, there's also a top bead. Yes, that one. That's where you want to feed the inside string through.
Okay, that's where I want to feed this.
Yes, we're getting there. It's just going to take some time. Yoo-hoo!
Oh, shit.
Oh, no.
It fell.
Oh, dropped it all.
All right. And this is where I want to feed the inside string through.
Yes.
Through one of them or both of them?
Through only one. You just take the inside string through the other radius, that is the first of the radii of that corner, so that both of your lines emerge on the circumference of that circle that you've drawn. Yes, Kitty, that's it. Exactly. Cool. Yeah, it's so pretty. Awesome. Okay.
I don't like the way that ended.
Show me.
I went through it.
But perhaps the other way around. Can you lift it up a little? Can you do me a favor and just wiggle it a little with your fingers like so? There's a twist in there.
Yeah.
That's really because you have those heavy ass beads. They keep turning on you, and then it's a bit of a mess. You know, perhaps, I don't know if you can move your camera, but if you can point your camera down on the place where you're working like this, this might actually be a lot easier, and I'm tempted to do it, but I also kind of like to have you see your faces and everything. But if I'm doing it like this, you know, sometimes it helps for this in the beginning.
It's okay. You can move on. I can try and fix this.
I would rather have you figure this out on this place so that we can go on together, because it's not much that keeps you kind of out of phase with us right now. It's really kind of bad luck with this material, but other than that. Okay, the right hand looks good. The left hand seems to still have a twist.
It didn't have a twist a moment ago, though.
Can you take the right hand line once back? Just
one?
Yeah, the right hand. Just retrieve that line back to. Yes, and then untwist the other side, and make sure that you avoid twisting any of the fingers. It happens to me too. Like sometimes you get distracted and the loop goes around some other place and then it's all a mess, you know, but it's just, you know, in a way, what we're doing together here is that I'm trying to help you move through the mistakes that you make with less of a trouble than when you try to do it on your own, right? But we are in this place where...
Yeah, this seems to not have worked either.
Nope. Okay. What are we going to do now?
So at this point, it should lay flat, right, before we add the next side.
Well, it can almost lay flat, but because it's only 5 fingers and
I'm not going to hold up
6.
the meetup. Just you can keep going. You can keep going.
Okay, I'll look forward to you catching up with us when you saw the recording, and we can always do this another time and have a session. Also, this is generally speaking to everyone listening here. Please let me know if you want to. We can always do sessions 1-on-1 or 2x2 or whatever in small groups. No problem. I'm available for those kinds of things, and I really enjoy doing this. It's really kind of a balancing act, you know, with do we get on or not, but perhaps you can just look at your thing for a little and figure out where you went wrong. In the end, it's generally speaking only usually 1 or 2 steps that were mistaken, and tracing those back. Generally speaking, if you do find yourself mistaken, take a few steps back to where you know where you are, and then go again from there, right? Okay, so for everyone else, we have gotten to this place where currently we're coming out of 2 fingers with our lines. So it's kind of like this. I always show my fingers like so and put a third on top to make it an eye, a triangle, right? So when you do find yourself coming out of 2 fingers, you only need 1 more finger to bridge the gap between the 2. Okay, so I'm going to pick 4 beads and I'll add those 4 to either side of the line because both lines go through this finger. One goes one way and the other goes the other way. Up, okay. So I've got my 4 beads on the line here. And I take my other end of the line and feed that in. Again, making ends meet, I always go in where the other end of the line comes out. Whoop. Okay, and as I draw on that, I find I have a knot in my line. But is it truly a knot or is it just a slip knot? Of course, complications. I think it's a proper knot. Looks like a figure 8. Okay, in this case, I'm gonna take my last finger back just the last step of the line to undo the knot that happened. Oh no, while entangling the rest of it. Okay, here, where's the knot? There. Yeah, that's a figure 8. I'm lucky. Figure 8 is a stopper knot, and it's one of the knots that can actually be untied. If it were just an overhand knot, I might not be so lucky. But it's funky, you know, sometimes lines just do funny things on their own. Right, Joe? Okay, that's a mess. But we're getting there. Yeah! And that's a knot undone. Afraid not. Okay, and I do again what I just did before the knot. I'll make ends meet, get the other end of the line into that finger. And now as I close this, you see how there's an eye opening, and now I've got my first corner with the 5 fingers all good. Yes, all closed. And in the end of this, you notice that I'm on the circumference with this finger, right? This is a circumferential finger rather than one of the radii. And generally speaking, when I'm growing something, I want to keep to the outside of things so that I can go from there rather than getting trapped on the inside. While there is some cases where that isn't asked for, we're not in that situation now. Okay, Jeannie, are you good? Oh, there's the camera. Oh yeah, beautiful. Yes, looks a bit like Maritza's, but with a bead more. Oh, look at that, Maritza, almost done. Almost. I think you need one more finger. Okay, for everyone else, we've closed that one corner and we're on this finger here, which is just as the first finger that we put on. You know, we can just think of that one finger and all the rest of it is a membership of that. And if we look at this now, at this situation, and we look at the 2 places, the 2 corners where the line comes out, both of them are equal. Both have 3 fingers, right? It's a balanced place right now. And when we have that kind of balance, it doesn't matter which side we add the 2 next fingers to. It does matter insofar as it decides the turn, the direction of the turning, but it doesn't really matter whether it turns one way or the other. Generally speaking, you know, universe always turns one way or the other. And I'm just going to pick one side and add 2 more fingers to that. So 8 more beats. Whoop. Ooh, Maritza. Have you closed all eyes already? So that
Closed
all the
them
connections
all.
are in? Brilliant.
Yep, they're all in.
Looking great. And as you are already at that place, a very interesting fact about that shape is it's got the golden ratio and Fibonacci all over it because of the 5ness and everything. And its quantum volume is the largest of the 3 basic structures of space-time. You know, if our 4eyes is the quantum volume of 1, the 8eyes has a quantum volume of 4, and this dozen 8eyes has a quantum volume of 106.5 and some golden ratio rest. So let's just say 106.5, which is a lot, you know, that's 106 times the volume of the 4eyes plus a bit. Whereas if you count the members, if you count the fingers that you put together, it's just 5 times as much as the 4eyes. That's some serious synergy going on, you know. That's a lot more to get out by putting a lot less in. All right, so much. I've added my 2 fingers to the one side of the line here. I'll take the other end of the line and make ends meet and feed it back through that last finger. And as I do, draw it close, I open another eye. And there. And this is what it looks like. So I've got here my corner with the 5 fingers, and on the outside of that is that one new eye. And now I'm out of balance again. So one side of the line here has a corner with 2 fingers, while the other has 4 fingers. All right, so we see, okay, the 4 fingers side is the inside now that we're turning around. It's the heavy side. And then we ask ourselves, is 4 the number of fingers we want? No, I see some shaking heads. Yes, indeed, we want 5 fingers for the corner, so we're 1 finger short, which is to say we're gonna add 2 more fingers to our light side, to the outside. And as we do that, we're growing another eye and getting another finger into the corner. So I'm adding 2 fingers. And Joe, just to make this, to say this, of course, it's kind of you're out in the deep waters right now, because everyone else, Jeannie and Maritza, have played along last time. So we've gone through the orientation phase, so to speak, and they're already a little more familiar with what it is that they're doing. And of course, that is not a level playground for you to, especially with those beats and that string. The odds are against you on this one, but I really hope that it doesn't keep you out of the loop too long and catch you up. Okay, so I've added the 2 fingers on my outside. I'm taking the inside line, the heavy line, and going back through that last beat, making ends meet, going in where the other line comes out. And by doing so, I've added another eye. And now the corner that I'm turning around, I'm coming out of this finger. On one side of the finger, there's only 2 fingers to the light side. And on the other side, we have now 5. Yes, 5 is what we want. Jeannie, you're shaking your head. Is everything all right? Can you unmute?
I think something's wrong.
Can you put it a bit further? Yeah. Yes, you've turned the last step that you took. You've ended on the outside finger rather than the inside finger. So if you take, you want both of the lines to come out of the other finger of that last triangle, not the one that you're in right now, but the other side, and then you're going to be fine. Okay, Kitty, how is it looking on your side? Oops.
Bear with me, I'm going to try and reorient you. So from here on out, I was going to ask if we're putting it always on the outside, but now I've gone back in.
Yes, because you're closing that next corner, and when we're doing that, then we're taking a step from the inside out, right? Oh no, you haven't yet. Okay, forget what I just said. You're all right.
So
you're on the inside finger right now. You're on a radius of that corner that you're turning
there's
around.
the original 5.
Indeed.
And then I added
that one
coming out and coming back.
Yeah.
Oh, where am I? Yes.
Yes.
And then I added the 2 more.
Yeah.
And that's where we are here.
Exactly. And you
and
see
I've gone back through the pink, and now I'm back in the inside.
Exactly. You're on the inside finger. and the outside line has 2 fingers and the inside line has 5 fingers, right? And you want to now put your inside line that comes out of the pink and put it through that, is it yellow or orange?
Right here, the orange,
Yeah, going through
Okay.
that, because now we're closing that
binding
corner.
it back.
Exactly. We have
Okay.
5 fingers assembled for that corner, which is what we need. So we close that corner. And that is always taking the inside string, the heavy side, and feeding that through, let's call it the first finger of that corner, if that makes any sense. I hope it does. There's some ways in which this is probably in the next couple of years still gonna fine tune the wording, but I'm pretty happy with where I'm at now. Like, it may not be the perfect way to do it, but it's a pretty good way already. All right, now I've done that. I've moved my inside string through the opposite finger of that corner. And now I'm coming out of 2 fingers. And whenever that is the case, it's like this. And I just need 1 more finger to bridge the gap, which is having, in my case, 4 beats, and then feeding both lines through their respective ways.
No.
No, what happened? Genie.
Okay, I'm back. I'm back to here.
A little lower, a little lower. Yeah.
Now what do I do?
It's good, I think.
Oh, I need my next.
Let me, show me again one more time.
I went all the way back.
You're turning around that corner and it's got 4 fingers right now. So you need to add 2 more fingers on the outside, and yeah, you're getting there.
This the outside? Is this the outside?
Yes, that's the outside, the light side.
Light.
It's light in terms of not being heavy. You know, if every finger has gravity to it, then a corner has less mass, so to speak, less weight to it, the less fingers it has. That's why a corner that has 4 fingers, in my mind, is a heavier corner than one that has 2. And it's light in that sense, not in not being dark. Maritza, are you growing yet another one, or is that the second one you're doing?
This is the second one with the
Oh yeah,
different
the
beads with the circular.
yes,
I'm
yes,
just fascinated by how different it looks compared
absolutely.
to these style of beans. So I want to see them together. So I'm gonna finish it.
Yeah, and I also highly recommend, I think I said this after the last session, I do highly suggest that everyone tries doing the same structures with different numbers of beads per finger, because the complete difference in appearance of the same structure with a single round bead for a finger versus 2 beads or 3, it's mind-boggling how different they look, but while being the same structure, right? And I think there's truly a deep kind of duality at play there. Okay, Jeannie, how is it going? Yeah, that's good. Yes. So you're on the inside finger now, and you take the inside line and you move it out of the, can you tell which bead, which finger you go through with the inside line? It's almost already there. like by itself. Yeah? Give it a try. Closing that corner.
If I may ask,
Please go ahead.
I did add one, I've only one side further than I was a moment ago, but it seems from here on out, every side I add, it's just coming back to that 5 point, instead of adding it to the lighter side continually.
Okay. Can you turn on your video? Yeah, that helps.
So here, from
Yes.
just, so there's my original,
Yeah,
4 + 1, and then ventured out.
to that one. That's the one you're
here.
closing right now.
And then I closed this one and then ended up going through the orange. And now I'm
Yeah.
adding another one over here on what would be considered, I suppose, the lighter side, which
Yes,
I suppose will.
Look, that's the moment where you're closing the gap. The moment where you put the line. Yes, exactly. That's what you're doing. You've got the finger already on one side of the line, and you just need to go through the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then from there, where would it be added?
We'll take a look from there. Just get there first, and then we're good to go on. Jeannie, how's it hanging? Okay, I'm a bit confused by okay, we're talking about those two. Yes, perfect. So you just add one more finger between the two lines. Whew, we're getting there. It's exciting. And I've seen Joe moving lines through the screen, so maybe he's doing something on his own time. He's muted, most definitely. Kitty, that's perfect. Yes, brilliant. Yes, perfect. Okay. So now I think Jeannie, Kitty, and Maritza, I hope too, we're at this place where I am, where we've just closed a second corner with 5, and I'm coming out of this finger here. And now it's a bit of a different constellation because one side has 3 fingers and the other has 4. Okay, and according to my nomenclature, the 3 is the lighter and 4 is heavier. So the 4 fingers side is the one we're turning around. And considering that one, we see it's still 1 finger short. All right. So to get that finger, I'll add on the light side where there's 3 fingers currently. I'll add 2 fingers to that and then close that loop, getting the other end of the line through the last finger there, making ends meet and all that, yada, yada, yada. I repeat myself, I'm sorry, but it's a very repetitive pattern. Repetitive. DLJ, how's it going?
Highly amusing. I'm just thinking of puns like bedazzled and for Joe, bedraggled. Anything beginning with DEAD. That's one.
Struppi, we're adding it to the one that has 4 or the one that has 3?
To the one that has 3, because that's the lighter of the 2. Okay. Yes, exactly, Kitty. That's it. Cool. And once you've got the 2 fingers on that side, like I do here. Oops, let me make that clear. Here. It's back again at that place where I take the other side of the line, which is the heavy side, and I'll feed it into that last beat, that last finger, I mean, where the other line comes out. Making ends meet. That's the trouble with the boxes. In the box world, no ends ever meet because the lines go on to infinity and supposedly plane squares and static 3-dimensional cubes. Nothing ever meets again. So that's why, you know, looking at our current state of the world, we find most of the troubles and problems that we have and the catastrophes come from broken circles and cycles. Like take the water toilet, you know. So usually what we do is we eat and we poop and we pee, and that's some of the highest quality outcomes of our body, you know, those excrements, as we call them, what we call human waste. Ironically, that's the one thing that isn't waste. It's just we keep wasting it. So we're civilized people, so we go to our water toilet and we flush it down with tap water, gallons of it, if in your case, in ours it's liters, and then it turns into a toxic kind of slush that is terrible for everyone involved. Whereas we could be, as I am, using a composting toilet or compost toilet, where all the stuff goes right back into the compost heap, which in my case is an eighteyes, where it turns into soil again, and the cycle can be closed, because where I take the food that comes from the ground to feed myself, what comes out of me, and it already goes towards the ground by nature, really wants to return to the ground to feed it in return, you know, so that again the ground can feed the plants which feed me. And that's how in permaculture we keep minding the ends of these broken cycles that are whizzing around, striking havoc everywhere, and we try to get hold of those ends and make them meet and tie those loops back in. And generally, usually when we do that, we often end up repairing more than one problem.
Yeah, I thoroughly agree. I've always been an advocate that the people who are making millions out of packaging should also be responsible for recycling.
Absolutely, that should be the minimum.
Yeah.
And they should know about shapes, because it's such an incredible waste to have everything in boxes. That's the most wasteful of shapes they could be using. But they're a long way away from, you know, Amazon realizing. Actually, here in Germany, there is, like, if I'm using the postal service, there's no way other than having a cubic kind of, or what's the word, a general case of a cube, not a cube as such, but you know what I mean, a box. It has to be a box, unless I'm sending a bottle of wine, which can go in a cylinder. But all the rest needs to be a box. And I'm really, that keeps me from sending my stuff away, because I feel like, why should I put my spheres into boxes? I'm tempted to just make one of these, like I make these, where I'm using basically a compass and a straight edge and some more tools to make these. This is the same stuff we're doing with the beads, it's just drawn out of paper on cardboard. And I'm tempted to do one of these out of like a recycled Amazon box and make it look all pretty like a regular box, and then just go to the postal service and try to send it off to somewhere, hoping that maybe they don't notice that it's a different shape. Fingers crossed, but who knows? Okay, you see how I keep babbling along so that we have some time for everyone to catch up. So the last thing I did was add another eye. So now I'm coming out of this bead, this finger here. My light side has 2 fingers and the heavy side has all the way 5. Yeah, that's all I need. So I close that corner. I take my inside line and feed it through the... I'm still open for suggestions how to call that. I would call it the first finger of that corner, if that one I just did was the last. But it's the first radius. out of those 5. If the last one is number 5, then I'm going through number 1. And once I've done that with the inside line, I'm back in that peculiar situation which happens when I'm closing a corner, where I'm coming out of 2 fingers, right? And that's this. So we add 1 finger in between the 2 lines. And then I think the cat wants out.
To either, you can add it to either side.
Indeed. In that case, you know, usually what we want to be is coming out of a single finger with our 2 ends of the line. And that's most of the time true. There's a few times when you're coming out of 2 fingers, and that's when you need a 3rd. And all the rest of the time, well, if I'm adding 2 on one side of the line, then I'm essentially coming out of 3. But now I'm back at 1 here, like this one. And before I look at the 2 corners, perhaps you can take a look and tell me what you find. And I'll take a look at the cat, letting her out. There you go. Go play, catch some mice, but leave the birds be. And the, whatever they're called, the moles. She's had a time with lots of molds, molds, the black things with the big paws. Give paws to the ground. Okay. So who wants to tell me how many fingers you find in your corners?
So this is the same as the last pattern, correct? So we'll end up with 3 and 4 and add to the 3 side, which comes around to the 4 side to make it 5.
Yes.
And then close that off with 1 more, and then we're with 3 and 4 again continually. All right.
We'll see with the continually. We'll see. This is where, generally speaking, we're just doing a step at a time, right? And you're right. Your forecast is very good. I think you've figured out how the pattern works. But let's see how many times continuously this keeps being the same, because I think the structure has a word to say on that. So I'm doing that. I'm adding on my light side where I have 3 fingers. I'm adding 2 fingers to the line, taking the inside finger, the heavy side, making ends meet. Okay, and then as I draw that close, I open yet another eye. And with that, now I find that my heavy side has 5 fingers, which is what I need. So I take the inside finger and let me show. It's still better to show what I'm talking about. I think the ideal would be that we get to a place where I repeat my words and you know what I'm saying, but I still want to show nevertheless. Here, I'm coming out of this finger. This is its light side. This is the heavy side, and there's 5 fingers in that corner. So I'll take the inside finger, the heavy string, and feed it through the first finger of that corner. Right? So again, if the one I'm coming out right now in that corner is number 5, then I want to go through number 1 with the inside line. This is so cool. Not long and everyone will have almost everyone will have their dozen eighteyes. It's such a beautiful structure. And, you know, the argument can be had that it is the most used of the three basic structures. Generally speaking, when we're looking at the world, it's kind of the basic structure for the geodome, you know, which is the popularized application of synergetics, the one that has been popularized. And a lot of people are familiar with that shape by that course. And I think the second most used, perhaps it's actually the most used, is the foureyes, because every tripod is a foureyes, you know, and every bike, if you look at the bike, you have the two wheels, and the second wheel, the rear wheel, has the axis going this way, that way, axis, then the wheel going around, and from the axis there's like these two arms going up on both sides, which then meet the pipe where the saddle goes in, right? And between that saddle pipe and the axle, that's a foureyes. You know, and once you get a little more familiar with these things, you may find them here and there, but generally speaking, they're rather rare. And especially the eighteyes, I think there's very few uses of it that I've found so far, other than dice and pyramids where they cut them in half for whatever reason. And then perhaps, I think one use that is a bit special is that Elon Musk's Starlink system, where they have these satellites whizzing around Earth in these chains. The satellite dish of that is sitting on a tripod, so there's our foureyes. And the router for the Wi-Fi that comes with that system is actually an eighteyes. It's not a regular one, so the lines are a little different in length everywhere around, but it's one of the very rare occasions where this shape has been used. And I'm always eager to find more, because I think really it's the most useful of all of the shapes. All right, that being said, I find myself in this case where I'm closing that corner here. I'm coming out of two fingers, so I'm bridging the gap, putting a third finger between the two, going both ways through with my line. Whoop. Here's one, and here's the other. Closing that. Now, as I'm watching this, as I close this, I noticed that the last corner that I tied, this one, is actually right now pointing in. So it's concave from the outside. And I kind of want them all to go out. So on this particular shape, we can turn it in and out even once it's done, because it likes to dimple, as Bucky called it. But for the sake of realizing or finding our way around, try to make sure that the corners that you're doing are all convex. So they're all turning, you know, concave and convex is the same thing. It's congruent. It's just when we're looking at the shape here, let me show here. So right now, all of these corners here are convex, right? So convex is convertex with a corner. So everything that hits this is being dispersed, right? It's reflected, refracted, and dispersed. Whereas if I push this in, like so, this corner is now convex. So it's convex on the outside, concave on the inside. And as such, it collects, right? It's like a bowl. One side of the bowl is collecting and the other is dispersing. And they always come together, right? And what we're trying to do right now as we're weaving this structure is that we want to have all of these corners go out like so. Okay. So
Let me
yes.
guess. Are we gonna
Yes.
put 2 fingers on the side, the light side that only has 3 fingers?
Indeed, because how many fingers is on the heavy side?
4.
Yes. So we're still one short. Let's go get that one in place. You see how this particular shape has the beauty of being complex enough that the repetition sinks in. Like it's enough continuity in it that one has a chance to kind of figure what the pattern is doing. And at the same time, it's not long now than before we actually have it done, and that's going to be surprisingly soon. Okay, so I've added 2 fingers to my to the light side. I'm taking the heavy side of the line and I'm making ends meet as before, countless times before. Drawing that in, drawing that closed, opening another eye, and now my heavy side has 5 fingers, which is to say I'm going to close that corner again, right? So in this one here, and on the heavy side, I'm going out with the heavy line through the first finger of that corner. What was that, Jeannie? Was that a surprise?
It doesn't make any sense at all.
Why?
Okay.
How so? It made sense all the way
Oh,
up to here.
we added to the light side and now we're closing the heavy side. I don't know.
Well, we've added to the light side, and then we took the inside to make ends meet, right? I hope. And now I am closing, because I've got my 5 fingers accounted for, I'm closing that corner, and that is the moment where I take the heavy line and go out through the first finger of that corner. And then it's back at this place where I've got 2 active, and I bridge the gap with a 3rd finger. Oops. I wonder what like if we had Otter or one of these AI things transcribing this conversation, what would the AI make of this? But really, I wish we had a software. It could be so simple, you know. It could be just the same thing that the magnets are doing, which is the same that we're doing here, or a simulation of what we're doing right now. It would not be difficult, I think, but I don't know the first thing about coding. But I wish we had some software like that, because it would be so cool to just model, and I could see it be something that can go both ways. Like I can choose the beginning, I could choose a structure already in place. I could say this kind of frequency, that kind of structure, and then I could take out stuff, you know. So it's either way of adding to grow, or having a big thing and taking out to shape. Anyways, that's kind of my dream. All right.
I think I've seen software, polyhedra, Platonic solid software out there. I'm more familiar with the computer models as well, rather than the hands-on approach. So this is certainly really interesting to break it down, you know, to all of the this will be 20 sides, yes, with the 5 at the start.
Yes.
But it's interesting to have it hands-on and see how it loops together.
Yeah, and how it moves, because all these steps in between, well, depending on your kind of situation in terms of what beats you have and what line and stuff, like when Maritza was doing the first one of those 2 that she's finished now, she must have had kind of a nice progression. Like every step along this way that we're doing right now, we're not focusing too much on looking at it as a whole all the way through. But as it grows, all the steps on the way are just beautiful in their own right. And now, oftentimes when I'm growing these things, I'm finding myself wondering like, oh, that thing in the middle, that's so nice, but I want to go there. I'm gonna go where I want to go, but maybe I'm just gonna do half of it some other time, you know, because that's so nice, that thing in the middle. And I really think that this growth process that we're participating in here with our beats and our lines is something that, you know, it's like baby steps. We're in the mesocosm right now, right in the middle between micro and macro, and all the rest of the cosmos has been doing this game forever. Look at the viruses. They are doing this very shape in a speed, a breakneck speed in every cell of our body when they infect us. You know, this is like basics of everything. And for us right now, it may be a bit of a challenge, you know, to wrap our minds around, quite literally fathoming the structure as we go along. But we're catching up on something that universe has been doing forever. And the pattern itself, well, while the viruses may not be using beats and string, the pattern is the same. So, you know, this kind of technique that we're using here seems to me particularly valuable or worthwhile because it is identical to what the magnets are doing, except for the fact that the magnets have their polarity. This doesn't, you know, the line doesn't mind whether we go one way or the other because it's the same. But other than that, it's the same behaviors present as we would have with the magnets. And contrary to at least the softwares that I've seen so far, you know, where again, if they are simulating so-called solids, like platonic solids or something, it's not the same as this because they aren't moving, they aren't animate matter. The solids are not alive. The platonic solids are not. That's why I keep calling these things polyops or many eyes, because to me it's not the same as a platonic solid, because the platonic solid lives only in the mental sphere, being held alive by ignoring the life at play. And I choose to tune into the life in so far as I decide to call these by these names as the many eyes, because that's everything about that is something where I can say my experience shows me time and again that this is true. Like this name, if I take as an agreement between us, among us, that if I take 3 spheres and I bring them close together, the gap that shows up between them here, where I can look through, I hope, perhaps if I see the camera there, I can look through between these 3 beats because there's a little eye. That's why I call it an eye, because we can look through it, right? And that if we agree on calling the triangles eyes, then every triangle is an eye, and then every structure that has grown from triangles is a many eyes, right? And here is perhaps, I think I showed this before. This is a little more complex than what we're doing right now. These are vector equilibria, or 2 dozeneighteyes. And both of them are 2-frequency. But there's a bit of a difference between these two. Main difference is that one's beats are bigger than the others. But other than that, the significant difference is that in this case, it's all of the corners, all of the vertices of the 2-frequency vector equilibrium in place, including these. Yeah, see them. So this side looks like a square, even though it's lots of triangles. And if I turn it that way, it looks like a triangle because it's all triangles, right? So here's one triangle out of 4 smaller ones. And here's one so-called square out of 4 squares. This is the same thing. It's just that corner is missing. See how that goes into all the way to the center. And while this one here will only dance locally because the beats are a little, you know, there's always a little play in the beats. This one here will dance globally, right? So if I move this, you can see how it shifts. Because this is not a, what is the, a cube octahedron. You know, the cube octahedron is like an Archimedean solid made of 8 triangles and 6 squares, whatever they are made of, you know, they're just there. But those can't move and they don't have a core. They don't have any dynamics to them. So yeah, again, I'm just making the point perhaps a few more times than needed. But as long as we can understand that we're talking about the same thing here, and perhaps you get my reasoning for calling this 20eyes or dozen and 8eyes. It's kind of in recognition of its being alive. That's what the name carries for me. Okay, that being said, long story short again, I am here. So I'm coming out of this finger, and one side has 3 fingers, that's light, clearly, and the other already has 5. What? So much for continuing the same thing. This one already has 5, so I can close it right away. Right, so I take my inside line, the heavy line, and bring it out through the first finger of that corner. Oop. There.
So you didn't add any beads on?
Nope, not on this one. If you look where you are, does one side have 3 and the other 5?
Oh, 1. Yes.
Yes, so 5 is fine. 5 is what you need. So you can close that corner right away. And as I've moved my heavy line out through the first finger of that corner, now I'm back in this place where I have 2, and I need a 3rd to bridge. Meow.
Now what?
What's up?
First you want in, then you want out. Then you want
I
in.
left the window open. Now she can go as she pleases, but I think she wants food. Just bear a little with me, okay? Okay, so I'm adding 1 finger in between the 2, and I'm going through that one with both lines, both ends of the line. It's the same line, after all. You notice how all this time we're taking only a single line and we're weaving it through the entire structure. And that's something, with very few exceptions, where I've cheated on one of the structures that I've made, and I showed you that before, this one, which is perhaps the most complex one I've done so far. 3-frequency 8eyes with the entire interior structure present. And on this one I cheated because when I was done, I realized I had two loops missing. So I took 2 extra lines to finish it. And no one will ever know unless I keep telling everyone. But you won't find them, I'm sure. And all the rest of these, like this one here, I could tell you, we could, if I look up in the table that I got, the number of vectors in this, which I don't know out of the top of my head. I know the number of vertices on the outside is 3.5 dozen or 42. But the number of vectors, I don't know right now, but if we knew that number, we could multiply it by 4 because that's every vector has 4 beats, and then we would know the complete number of beats in this, the total number. And it's a lot, but they're all strung up on the same line, right? It's one line. I call it the umbilical cord sometimes. And we can grow on that. We can add to the umbilical cord until we get to a place where we say, now it's grown enough. I wouldn't call it grown up, that I realized that recently. When we speak of people, our youth, our childhood is when we're growing up, and then sometime when we're older, we're grown up. And all the time we're thinking up, and Bucky would say, nah, that's out. Up and down is nonsense. It's out or in. And really thinking about that, when we're growing up, what we're meaning is we're growing in that direction, but we're really growing omnidirectionally. We're growing out, all the way until we don't anymore. And then we still keep growing inwards, and we're probably growing beyond our boundaries as well. All right, but all of that, let me know where you are. I'm here. Almost done. Now I got my little geodesic dome that I can sit on the ground because it's got an open pentagon on the bottom. But it turns out with that open pentagon, it's not omnitriangulated, so this is actually able to transform quite substantially. So it's not yet done, right? But are you all with me on this? Yeah? So looking at the two sides that were coming out, what's the tally? How many fingers do we find in the two corners? Anyone? I know, I'm just
I think I'm
asking.
ahead of you. I think I'm ahead.
Okay. How so?
Well, I'm almost done.
We're almost done too. Yeah. Well, if you were still in the place where I am, then I would look at my two sides here, and both of them have 4 fingers, which is a balanced place again. So it doesn't matter where I add my next 2 fingers. I just choose one side, I'll add 2 fingers. Because again, 4 is 1 less than 5, and I want 5, right? That's why I add one more eye, 2 more fingers, 8 more beats. I suppose unity is plural and at minimum 2. No, I do. Yep. Now we're connecting up the cat with the thing. Nice how she draped the line over her ear.
Helpful.
She's holding on to the line too. Okay, I added 2 fingers on one side. I'm taking the other side of the line and making ends meet, going through that last finger. And that line that we're drawing is clearly not a dead line, it's a lifeline. Okay. With that, I find myself in a curious case that my light side has 2 fingers and the heavy side has 5. Who would have thunk? So 5 is what I need. I can close that corner. And by now I hope I don't have to go into detail on closing the corner. Taking my inside line, the heavy line, going through the first finger on that corner to the outside. And then I've got my 2 fingers. I need a third to bridge the gap. Whoop, whoop. Whoop-a-doop. Jeannie, you're done, are you? all the way?
Seems so.
Take a close look on the two corners where you're coming out. Are all the connections in there already? Because there is a chance with this where the last step, like,
Yeah, I tried to add some beads and I had too many, so I had
that's
to
a
take
good
them off.
sign. But what I mean is that when we're doing these, right, like, for example, when I'm doing a 4eyes, I make one eye, I make a second eye, then I already have 3 fingers in the corner, I close the corner, and then it already looks like a 4eyes because all the fingers are there. But looking closely, I see that one eye is missing insofar as the connections aren't drawn yet. So it's only 3 out of 4 eyes drawn. And my question to you, Jeannie, is when you're looking at the 2 corners where you're coming out, do you find all 5 connections drawn in those both corners? Cool, then you are done. Because there is a way of having the last eye, the fingers present, but not the connections drawn yet. So I'm just continuing here. I'm not bothering telling you every single step. I'm just following the same pattern, and I find again after that last thing I did, the heavy side has 5 fingers, the light side has 3. So closing off the heavy side.
Hey, Joe, I think you almost have this, don't you?
Irregular.
Almost.
You know, the
Joe, it looks like you
funkiest.
got different beads.
I did. I just got another set, but these are equally as challenging.
What do you have?
They got huge holes.
That's, well, I was gonna say that's helpful, but because of your string, maybe not so much.
No.
Yeah, there's, you know, always a
Still have a
Goldilocks
minimum
zone where
structure.
everything is nice and hewn and goes well together. And it's incredibly, it's like with every craft, you know, if you're doing a craft, then you find yourself using tools. And I am constantly being amazed by the number of tools people have created over time. Just the sheer amount of hand tools, for instance. And then you find, you know, there's the most weirdest of kinds of tools. And then you find yourself doing a specific craft and you need to do something in it. And you need a tool and you don't have the perfect tool. So you're substituting with something else, you know. And it may work if you're lucky. If you find something that can do the job somehow, great. But it's going to be a tough thing. It's going to be complicated. It's going to be cumbersome compared to having the actual proper tool fit to the job, where it's suddenly, if you know how to use it, super easy, perhaps, if you've done it a few times. And that is another case of tuning, you know, and tuning in that way is super precious. It's that treasure trove of tools and know-how. All it needs now, I think, really, 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 really clearly is a shift in the mindset, the frame of mind, back from away from the thinking in boxes and linear thinking, as they call it, with these lifeless things, to the living frame of the spheres, the spherical thinking that is synergetics, because it's not, it doesn't mind whatever craft we're using it for, you know, because it's the frame of mind. So it can be used for any craft, it can be used for anything we do, and it's still going to be valid. And it's just like having the proper tool for the job. Having a good frame of mind helps so much, whereas having a mistaken frame of mind, or one that is, as the boxes are, they are out of tune with all of universe, you know. That's why we have nature and human nature. the boxes are human nature, as we call it, and they're not really our nature. They're just a manufactured frame that we have and keep because of traditions, and because I think Bucky has not really been translated yet well enough to the world so that people can really understand what it's about. Because all the artifacts that Bucky did, you know, all the creations, that the Dymaxion series of things and whatever, all of that is great, but it's just applied synergetics. It's just the framework applied, and the true legacy, I think, is the framework. You know, it's the way of thinking that he put into synergetics, what I call the way of the spheres now. All right, I'm almost done. I've silently been weaving along, not telling every step. Sorry for everyone who's watching this and following along. I just hope that by this time you've realized the pattern so that you can do it on your own. And now I'm in that very place where I was talking about earlier, where I've got all the fingers in place, but this last finger here, it doesn't yet have all the connections drawn. So the fingers are in place, but the last eye is not yet drawn, right? So I'm gonna go do that now. I'm gonna take one side of the line and just go 2 steps around where the connections are missing. I'm adding the connections. I'm following the finger pointing, just as the Zen koan says, you know, the Zen is the finger pointing at the moon. And dozen is the finger realizing that it is the moon. Or as Alan Watts said, if I am my foot, I am the sun. That's, you know, that's a great insight, isn't it? If I am my foot, I am the sun.
No, that's not an insight. That's crazy.
No, that's just realizing our true identity is universe. Yes, we're universe focused in on any one body, you know, bound by our boundaries, binding our insides to our outsides, but we're still integral to universe. We're a member of universe. We're not a part of universe or nature. We're a member of it, and as such, we are universe. And as much as I can, if I can agree that this hand is me, right? Because I am in it, you know. And I remember when I was little, I was putting things in my mouth to find out whether I could feel them from the inside and the outside. Because when I put it in my mouth, I feel it from the outside. But if I can feel, you know, if I put my finger in my mouth, I can feel both ways, right? I can feel from the inside out, the outside in. And then I know this finger that I've put in my mouth is really a part of me insofar as it is within my boundaries. I can feel it from the inside. But there is no separation between that and the rest of universe, you know. Like between my 2 fingers, where is the difference? Like where is the border between them? It's like waves on the ocean. You can differentiate them roughly, but there's no clear distinction. There's no clear, this is where one begins and the other ends, right? And we are the ocean of universe. We're waving along it. Every one of us has their own tune, their own flavor, their own memories, their own life patternings going on for as long as we do. And then we breathe out into the whole and we move on with that. But our memory will be more and more diluted in the whole, but it will continue on. I'm sure of that. Kitty, how is it going? Oop. Nice. Nice. Very good. See? And you've come back into one finger, so you're coming out of one finger. And that's something the last time around when we finished our structure, I was talking about this somewhat, that in that case, we did that, what you do there, where we're coming out of a single beat in the end, or a single finger in 2 directions. And then on the last time we made a knot in the ends of the line so that we had like a necklace of sorts where, yes, just like Maritza. And Maritza, can you show, you can open that structure, right? You can open the last eye because it's the loop that comes out of it is member of that whole structure. So you can open it because there's slack in the loop, and then you can close it back again. Now what I'm doing instead this time is I've gathered my 2 lines in one corner here, right? They're coming out of 2 fingers, adjacent fingers. And in that corner, I'm doing a reef knot. I'm tying the line together in that corner. And when I'm done with that, I hide the ends of the lines back in the adjacent fingers, turning them back into where they come out from. And then I'm pretty sure that's not going to capsize or undo itself. And with that, once I've hidden those 2 ends of the line, I cut off the string, and then it's really a structure on its own. Like it's got a belly button, if you like. It's the moment where I cut the umbilical, and this one won't grow unless I add more string to it, which I can always do. But that way, rather than having this kind of a talisman or the kind of thing like a container where you can open it and close it, just as Maritza showed us there, with this way, it's a unit in its own, and it's really just happy on its own. So that's what I'm doing this time. I've done my little knot in that corner, and I'm just hiding.
Struppi, what would I do if I wanted to change mine into that? What would I have to undo?
You just open that last loop you did and retrace or retract the line, one of the ends of the line 1 step, so that it meets in the corner with the other line.
Oh,
And that's
Okay,
where
so I
you
have
do the
one.
knot.
Okay,
Yes.
so I have one open corner like this, and then here I tie.
There you tie the knot, and afterwards hide the ends of the lines in their adjacent fingers, and that's it. That's all there is to it.
Okay.
And here I'm cutting one line and the other, and with that, I call it a day. Or at least I call it a dozen eighteyes. There we go.
I guess I cut my string shorter, huh?
Well, it's always easier to add, cut. Well, anyways, I'm getting tired. What DLJ wrote something. Looking at Kitty's design, I wonder what the math is to determine the minimum number of colors one can use for the fingers with no color joining to itself. Ooh, that's a good question.
Well, those two purples meet.
Yeah, those 2 purples meet, and I think 2 oranges too, isn't
That's against the rule.
it? But how would you determine that as you're cooking it, right? So what would be the minimum number of colors? Yeah, there's going to be a formula for that somewhere, but I'm not smart.
I'm sure.
Actually,
yeah.
the orange meet too. On that one vertex, the orange meet.
So we've got 5 meeting in each spot, plus the 5 around, and then we've got a ring of the triangles up and down, right? And then another 5, if we want to
Yeah.
look at it that way.
Yeah, that's
As far
one
as
way to look at it.
Whatnot.
Yeah, but you see, there's really quite a variation of numbers of ways of looking at these, because one can also think of it in terms of pairs of eyes, and a dozen and 8 or 20 is 10 pairs of eyes, right? So if we took that as a unit, then we would find correlations there. And generally speaking, I think that question DLJ is quite like it's not non-trivial, at least for me to answer, because of the fiveness, there is an oddity to this, right? There is, in a way, every time we have 5, it's usually 3 and 2 or 2 and 3. Sometimes it may be 4 and 1, if we think about it that way. But it's really quite strange to think about this. Like, we could take 2.5 dozen colors, 30 colors, then every finger had its own. That would be fine. Then no fingers would meet in their color. We could have half of that number and have the 2 opposite lines here, this one and this one, these 2 fingers in one color, then they wouldn't meet. And then it would be 15 or 103 colors. And anything beyond that is possible, but I'm not going to go into it. I'm not going to tempt my non-mathematician mind.
Jeannie
Genius.
might work it out.
Yes.
She's got to hand up.
She's like, I got the answer.
The 5 goes way back in nature. So think
Yes.
of starfish. And actually we are, part of that 5. It goes way back. I mean, it goes back into the fish and everything. And it goes in the plant world.
Absolutely.
You think there's often 5 petals on a flower. So
Yes.
actually the 5 thing goes way back. It's integral.
Absolutely. Because in general, speaking of universe, there is no, like, we're used to thinking of universe as a linear progression from Big Bang to cold death of the universe, or whatever we figure is on the other end of that line. But really, I think it's more wise to think of it in terms of cycles, and waves are always going around, and as such, it's very difficult to say where it begins. And as such, we can only realize that the 5, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to a dozen, that's just there, and there's no way of saying one is before the others, because they all come together and they're mutually arising. And actually, let me, now that we're all got the structure in our hands, right, with enough eyes for all of our fingers plus our toes to put through if we choose to, here is where I can relate this back to the dance of the Tao, to the jitterbug. I think that's nice, right? So here is the membrane of the vector equilibrium, that the one that's doing the dance of the Tao, the jitterbug, this one, right? And all the way compressed down through the 8 eyes, through the 4 eyes, into a single eye, we realize that this is inherent and implied in every triangle already, because a triangle is polyform. It already embraces, by being a triangle, all of these shapes. Then we unfold this and we get these 4, which is a 2-frequency triangle, which can fold into the 4 eyes, right? One way and the other, inside, outside. Now, after that, there's a few more things that I'm not going to go into, side tracks, but here is a trunk of a 4 eyes, of 2-frequency 4 eyes, which isn't stable, but then we twist it a little and it turns into the 8 eyes, and as such, it's omnitriangulated and stable, more or less. This still has a bit of its own mind. Okay, but after that, it just expands omnidirectionally all the way to this place where it's in balance, where the vector equilibrium would live if I put in the nucleus, which I can if you want me to. But after that, it turns back into itself and folds in the other way, right? It's going one way or the other. And now that place of balance, that's the vector equilibrium, right? That's this one here. Oops. And I'm gonna take those the radii away, so that we're not distracted by those, and only look at this. This is the vector equilibrium. That's the same membrane plus a nucleus in it. Yes? And the nucleus provides the omnitriangulation so that this thing is a structure as such, but it is the geometry of 0, which I'm not going to go into now. And it is not all the way omnitriangulated. It's in a weird kind of place where it's both triangulated and not, because it does have this place, this wiggle room where it does a little of the dance, which is why Bucky was clear to say that you won't find a proper vector equilibrium in universe. At least not the static one that you find on the paper when you draw it. And I think that's really what he meant, because in universe, in life, the structure is always somewhere off kilter. It's a little out of balance. It's here or there or wherever, but it's, as Bucky said, nature abhors the point in the middle where it's not moving, where we kind of keep it usually stuck. Okay, so here is a nucleus. And in my first session with all of you, that was where I began. I had this in here. And I don't know if you want me to, I can put it in, and then we get the vector equilibrium, or I can just put in these other 6 here, and then show us where the very structure that we've just grown has its place in this dance. Okay, so I think I'm going to do that. Still can add the nucleus later on if you want me to. But first I'm going to take these additional 6 fingers. Every single one of these fingers has 2 fingertips, 2 beads on the end. So that allows me to plug it into the corners of the eyes of this membrane. And as we do that, we're bridging across what could be mistaken for a square, but again, that square is a gap. It's not defined. It's something between the triangles that can be, in its most balanced place, appear to be a square. Now, if I'm putting in this finger, it turns into a pair of eyes, and as such, it's still able to move and fold, but it's a lot more structured than the square would be. And then I turn this over, and I'm just gonna successively add these half a dozen fingers that I've got here into the half a dozen supposedly square openings. And as I do, this goes more and more stable. That's number 3, or is it 4 already? It's 4. This is 4. And this model is a little also losing tension and a bit rough around the edges. Too much play. It's just getting old. Aren't we all? Here. So this is 5 out of 6, right? And you see how it's still very much moving. It's kind of like a Pac-Man. It's got a mouth here, right? And only by adding the sixth finger do I complete the omnitriangulation of this membrane. And now it is the dozeneighteyes, the very structure that we've just grown all together. Yeah? But you may notice, if you look at any one of its corners, how there is 2 triangles coming together. Like in this corner, there's the blue triangle and the green triangle. And then there's the fifth finger, which is the black and white one that I added. And that's true for all of these corners. There's like 2 times 2 and 1 added. Yeah?
That's amazing.
It is. It's great fun. And it's a lot bigger than the foureyes that it can also be, you know. But it also goes to show that all of these structures are the same. Like there are stages or states, if you like. I think in quantum mechanics, this would probably be related to, like there's these phase levels of things where they just jump from one to the other, and they're cool at one, and they're cool at the other, but they won't stay anywhere in between. And that's kind of what we find here. Like This is, according to Bucky, the jitterbug, or what I call the dance of the Tao, is a model of a wave, an omnidirectional wave, such as sound wave or electromagnetic waves. And they do go all the way around, right? Even the sunlight, the sun shines at us and we see along the radius, but it's really a sphere of light growing out all the way. And so are all of the stars, and so are all of us. You know, like you and I, we can see one another when we're in the same room, unless there's someone standing in the middle between us. But other than that, no matter where I stand in the room, I can see the other, as long as there's a clear sight of line, because the actual light that is emanating from any one of us is emanating omnidirectionally in a sphere. That's why I can see everywhere that one, you know. I'm never going to see it from the same perspective if I move around, but it's still, this is, I don't know how easy this is for everyone to wrap their minds around, but think of the vacuum of space. We spoke of it earlier, right? It seems to be black and dark, but it's full of these spheres of light that emanate from each of their own hearts of their stars. But these stars may look so small, but really as they light and they shine their light, they're growing out extensively everywhere. Yeah. Okay, now I've done this. I'm going to unplug these and put in the nucleus just for fun, so we have the whole thing, and I can show you that too. But yes, now you have a bit of a sense of where that structure that you've just grown has its place in the bigger picture, so to speak, in the larger storylines of the stories of the spheres. And I hope that helps with the orientation. And just for fun, here's my nucleus. And this is the core of this corner here, this vector, is what I tied there. The knot that goes around there is the same as this, right? The same connections. But from that, the line goes always into one of these radii through the fingertip and then back through. And that's how I found this way of, yeah, just making buttons for all of these structures, which is so cool, you know. Like, I can tell you, I knew all of these things when I read them in synergetics. Like, I had them figured out, so to speak. I could see that this would happen if I could make it happen. But it took years until I got to a place where I could make it happen. And then it took even longer for me to actually make it happen, because it seemed so obvious. You know, it seemed like something that perhaps not everyone who I'm talking to would know, you know, probably not. But to me, it seemed obvious, so I didn't really bother making it. And then I made it at some point, and these simple things always take the longest. But when I made it, I was like, oh, wow. Like, wow, now I can actually just do it, you know, and whether I explain what I do or just do it, it speaks for itself, right? That's the beauty of these structures, of these spheres. They do speak for themselves, and all I'm doing is lending my voice. You know, I'm learning their language, learning the tongue of the triangles, so that I can speak to the patterns and principles and everything at play. But none of my words count for much if it wasn't for the spheres themselves telling their own stories, singing their own songs. And here we go. One more radius. And we have our dozen around one, our vector equilibrium, which isn't really in equilibrium right now, because this one clearly has a bias. It wants to be one way or the other, right? Here or there, but it doesn't really want to stick in the middle here. That would be balance as we think of it statically, but it really is either here or there. because balance is always a play. It's like balance for the man. It's this back and forth and in and out and all around. Yeah, so that's what the same thing does when it's got a core, when it's got its nucleus, and it still can shapeshift. I can even still contract it all the way into the eighteyes once I set the fingertips free to get out. Here, there, there, whoop, up, alley hop, there. Now we have the eighteyes with those vectors in it, and that looks like the XYZ coordinate system, except for the fact that all the axes are doubled. X, Y, Y, Z, Z, plus and minuses. So it's a dozen still. Same dozen that is here, just compressed or contracted. And that's that.
Struppi, the you know what
Yes.
you're calling now the axes, they have
Yes.
actually changed orientation in the polyhedra, right? I mean, they're flexible in order to move around in different angles. No?
Exactly, because they're not rigid. None of the corners are microtriangulated, so the entire thing, the entire shape is a resultant of the triangulation and the structure. But it's not enforcing anything beyond that structure, which is why it's enabled to move. And this here is another example of that. That's the same kind of membrane, so it's just like this. This is a small version of the other. And then I thought, what happens if I add like diameters, right? I put these sticks that go through from one pole here, through the middle and out on the other side here. So this is 6 of them added. And when I contract that, it again looks like what we just had with the seemingly XYZ coordination here. 3 axes, which are 6 and actually 12. But if I expanded that place where they all pass by one another in the middle there, turns out it's actually a knot, and the knot is a foureyes. So that's the center of gravity, right? It's the heart of the structure is a foureyes. And you know, there's these ways in which these things just come back at us again and again, one way or another. Yeah. Okay, so how is everyone? Still around? Happy, I hope. Now you got your structures, I hope. How is it with you, Joe? How did it go for you? You did do something on your own, right?
I'm just playing with it right now.
Come again?
I'm just playing with it right now.
Okay. How is it? What is it? Can you show?
It's it's beginning of a structure.
Yeah. Nice. You know, I had recorded with the help of a friend, William, a tutorial on this dozeneighteyes, but alas, we ran out of storage space somewhere along the way, and then we deleted the file in the process. So that's gone, and I have not done it again. However, I shared the last time in the other session the link to the video where I'm doing the eighteyes, right? And really the entire pattern is explained in that already. It's just the number of fingers is different. So if you choose to, if anyone wants to do this on their own terms, I recommend that video. One of those, actually, I've got a few now, but perhaps the one with the eighteyes as a beginning place to kind of get your fingers around what this is about. And then once you kind of get where the pattern is going, it should be possible to figure out how to do this one, just knowing that it's 5 fingers for every corner. That's kind of the secret sauce to this. And 6 fingers to every corner would be a different story, but that's back to the vector equilibrium. Yes, Jeannie.
Well, you can see how this structure, I mean, that
Can
flexibility.
you move it into the camera?
Oh,
A little over? Yeah.
The flexibility of it. I mean, that makes
Yes.
a very good cell. And a cell
Indeed.
needs to breathe, you know, so that
Yeah.
it needs to pull air in and push it out, or else suck, you know,
Yes.
pull moisture in and push it out again. And so a flexible polyhedra is more conducive to life.
Yeah. Well, it's really where life lives in, you know, like this. Here is another example of the same structure, a different technique. This is the kind of knot that I use to make my tree ships and my furniture and stuff. And this is still a dozen 8eyes, just as the one we did. Like if I take this corner here, there's 5 branches, 5 fingers going off of that. So that's the same all over. But this is a different way of making it, where I tie knots around the ends of the branches rather than going through the whole thing or drilling holes. But this is another example of how that exact shape, the same exact shape, can look vastly different. And still, this is, you know, you see how nothing about this needs to be exact or precise, you know, because life rarely is. Like, yes, geological life, like mineral life, for instance, on that level, life is pretty perfect. Like, you find the odd defect, as they call them, in the crystals, of course, but generally speaking, when you're gathering or playing with atoms, there's a very general isometry, like all the atoms of a certain kind, of a certain element, will be pretty much the same size. Probably much more the same size than these beads, you know, very different orders of magnitudes. And in that level of or scale of universe, there is probably a lot more what we may call perfection. But once it grows to a scale where we see it, like a crystal that we actually can hold and look at, it's very rare to find the perfect one, you know. There's a lot of crystals that grow as 8eyes, actually, but they're rarely perfect, because it's like a snowflake, you know. The general pattern is the same that we're using. That's why they have six-foldedness to them. Every one of the snowflakes is like this. This is a tree flake, a wood flake. And that's what the water molecules do together. But once we are moving into a scale where we can actually see the super molecule that is growing from them, the crystal, the level of, like, the resolution is so high, you know, that it's already in a field of complexity where it's hard to find two snowflakes that look the same, right? Because as the snowflakes grow, they embody their environment. They play along with the air that they're moving in. Yes, Jean, sure.
I'm not sure, because I think the resolution might be the same. I mean, part of it is how we, you know, our ability to look at very small things or even perhaps very large things, you know, but I don't know, the resolution might be consistent. I just can't say that I would agree absolutely.
Well, this might be really just a question of what we're trying to say, you know, rather than like, it's very difficult to put these things in words to begin with. But what I mean when I say resolution is the point of having a single water molecule that's beyond visibility, far beyond, you know. We need probably electros.
I'm saying each water molecule probably has quite a bit of difference to it that we don't have the ability to detect.
That might be, but generally speaking, I think at least the scientific sense, I think, would be that a water molecule H2O is just that. It's one oxygen and two hydrogen. And they
Yeah,
have this,
but
because
a
of that.
human is a human too. A human is a human. A star is a star. You know.
Yeah, that's a given. But you know, if we change something about that setup, we get something like heavy water, deuterium or something like that, right? So that's a different kind of molecule then. But
yeah, but there's a certain percentage of them, you know, throughout.
of
So,
course, I'm not saying
you
anything
know,
against that.
and
I'm
what
just
else? I mean, that's only something that we can detect. So, I mean,
exactly.
and as you say, everything's in motion. So, since
Absolutely.
everything's in motion, then they're all going to be just a bit different than each other, perhaps.
I hope
The
so. I
60-degree angle is standard for the oxygen molecule, for the hydrogen to be attached to that oxygen molecule.
Yeah.
That's why the 60, it would be 6 all around to
Yeah.
attach the snowflake.
Yeah, and because of the pattern already present in any given member of that snowflake, every molecule in the snowflake has already that shape present in it. Therefore, the overall pattern of the snowflake is going to follow along those lines. But however the snowflake turns out is not to be like, that's such a complex conversation between the water molecule, the air, the humidity, the pressure, the cold, the temperature, and all of these factors play a role in what shape the snowflakes grows, right? But still, like, that is again where this level here, this is kind of like having a single molecule. Like, it's a super base. And what I mean by resolution is I can count the numbers of members of this. This is a dozen. This is not like a drop of water where I can't count, for the sake of it, count the number of molecules in that drop of water. It's just beyond what I can count. I can maybe weigh it and then approximate, but I couldn't tell perfectly fine that it's that many, and I don't have to, right? But that kind of complexity is why in our mesocosm, where we're living, you and I and everyone, it's very easy to overlook the spheres because they tend to be either very small or very big, and everything in between is the play of the spheres, where they are free to grow a lot of shapes, right? And as they grow these many shapes, the question becomes, do we recognize the variety of shapes as something that is in nature spherical, or do we not? And my point is that, with why I call this spherical thinking, is that we broaden the definition of sphere. We go beyond what the Greek called a sphere, because that's nonsense. And in terms of synergetics, a sphere is, as Bucky called it, a definite number of vertices approximately the same distance from approximately the same center. Okay, there's at least two times approximation in there. Approximation, right? Mm-hmm. So that leaves a lot of room to embrace a lot of things that would not meet a more exclusive definition of a sphere as the Greek sphere. That's actually so exclusive that you won't find a single sphere in the universe that can actually meet that definition, because the Greek sphere, just to reiterate, would be a surface, whatever that is supposed to be, of an infinite number of points, and around every one of those points, for an instant, there's 360 degrees. So it would be 360 degrees is like this, it's a hexagon. But that wouldn't give us a sphere, because if we just have hexagon beside hexagon, it's going to be you know, a plane. It can fold, yes, but it's going to be a plane. And if we do want to make a shape, this is actually one of the places where I put lots of my recent beats. I made these. This is a dozen. Here, let me take that off and that. Oops. Oops. There. Okay, so this is also a dozen eighteyes, just as the one we just grew. Oops. But this is made of these sticks, these dowels, that I've just put into a dozen of these, right? So this is a dozen such hexes as this one. And if you want to see the whole thing, I've recently done a video showing it, transforming it through a couple of different shapes. Because what you may notice if you look at this, since I've got hexes on all of the corners, it's a dozen corners, it's a dozen hexes, but every corner of this structure is only using 5 of the fingers. So there's always one finger, one radius pointing out. Could be pointing in, but it's one pointing away from that structure, right? So sum total, if there's a finger for every one of the corners, it's a dozen fingers pointing away. And that's a constant. That dozen fingers is a constant for all of the shapes. If we account for every finger stands for one triangle, which is 60 degrees, 5 dozen. 5 dozen or 60 degrees times a dozen is 5 grow, or 720 degrees. That's 2 circles. One circle is 360, 2 grow, 6 dough. 360 times 2 is 720. 2 full circles give 720 degrees, which is the same number of degrees that we find sum total over the foureyes. Every foureyes has 720 degrees. In other words, the thing that we take out over the membrane of any body, that 720 degrees, is identical to 1 foureyes worth of degrees. In other words, synergetics says the takeout, the angular takeout for anybody is 1 foureyes, right? And that's a constant. That's something we have in common with everybody in the universe. You will find, go for a crocodile if you like, an alligator, and count the, however you want to define them, count the corners over their surface, their membrane, their boundary, and the number of degrees over the whole thing will be exactly 720 less than it would be if you multiplied the number of corners by 360. It's a mouthful. That's why I like the model. It shows that, you know, whether I make this one into a foureyes or whatever, the number of fingers pointing away is always going to be a dozen sum total. Okay, I don't know how we got there, but
you better explain that a little better. Like, okay, so how does that model show that the other thing exists? The deficit of 720 degrees.
It's not a deficit, it's a complementation. It's okay. Yeah. Maybe this is perhaps something we can look into next time a little more.
Okay. Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
It's all right. It's all right.
Here.
It's all right. You know, I can also perhaps post the link to the video where I've actually done, I think, at least 2 videos where I talk about the angular takeout in detail. And the more recent one of those 2 is the one where I show this particular model. So if you bear with me, I'm going to look up the link to that and put it here in the chat. And we can always come back to this next time around. I think it's really, it's probably already too much if I even just try to put it in words here, because it is a complex complex thing already. And
It is, but it's wonderful with every
yeah,
layer of explanation. And it becomes a little bit more clear, as it should. And I'm coming at this from looking at it at, I'm more familiar with looking at it at adding dimensional space, you know,
okay.
taking the triangle, and then if you were to fold that, you know, 3, and then if you were to add another one, you can still pop it out into space. But once you get to 6, it's flat. So here in 3 dimensions, you've only got you've got 5 solids, and then in 4 dimensions it would be 6, and then it goes back down to 3. So you've got that 3 constant, and so that's what I'm hearing in all of this. But I know that I'm looking at it through a lens that I need to widen, a perspective I need to widen a bit.
Yeah, actually, the way that you put it, I think there's a certain resonance, but there's also somewhat of a discrepancy in these two views, because for one, again, the idea of having these solids, you know, that's already something where I'm out, you know, I don't see any solids. But the idea that is behind the Platonic solids, the 5 that everyone's familiar with, to me is a problem, because it throws together structures and constructs. Because the foureyes, eighteyes, and dozeneighteyes, or as the Greek would call them, tetrahedron, octahedron, and icosahedron, those are structures. They are omnitriangulated as they are. Whereas the hexahedron and the dodecahedron aren't structures. You see, I have here a so-called hexahedron, and it's no structure there. Unless I construct it, i.e. add a structure to it, it's not going to be able to hold a shape unless I fold it into one of the many shapes that it can actually hold, like so. Right? But it's not going to be able at all to hold this as the so-called cube. So the same is true for the dodecahedron. Unless we triangulate it, it's not going to be a structure. So the entire category to me is somewhat arbitrary, you know, because it's putting together things that don't fit together. Because I can very well take the same dozen straws that are this and not a structure, turn them into an 8eyes, and then they are a structure and they hold their shape. So why would I make a category where these two are just thrown in? And then that's my first kind of thing that I really have a hard time with. And the other is that it ignores the presence of the vector equilibrium, because that's the 6, that's the hexagon. And you just said that the hex is flat. And I agree. If I put it out like this, oops, oh, there it goes. If I put it out like that, it's flat. But I would call it neutral, because this can very much fold. And if I do grow a structure of a higher frequency, I do find every time, let's take a look at this one. This is the membrane of the 2-frequency 8eyes. And you can see clearly the higher the light color shows the 8eyes here, and every one of those corners of that on the outside has the 4, like so, 4 fingers, but between them are the 6 fingers here. So that's a hex. It's just laid around that edge, like so. Right? And insofar, it's a neutral corner. And the higher the frequency, the more of these hex corners appear. Like here's the 3 frequency, and you find still the same 6 corners that have 4 fingers, right? And mind you, 6 times 4, 4 is 2 less than 6. So it's 6 times 2 taken out. So it's a dozen taken out over the whole thing. And all the other corners along the membrane have 6 fingers. So they're neutral. They don't add nor do they subtract from that angular takeout. And we could have as many of those as we wanted to. They don't change something about that. But we can do something. I'm very happy I brought this because I was hoping perhaps we could get around to this. Because I wanted to offer this as perhaps the easiest way for you to get a hands-on model of the vector equilibrium. This is a model as described by Bucky. And you see it's a vector equilibrium. Yes, I hope you recognize that by now. And this is grown from a dozen what's that called? These hairpins. Whatever, I forgot the word. And if I take them out, the rest of this shows what it really is, because it's 4 of these. And this is what Bucky called a bow tie. It's a pair of foureyes connected by one corner. So if we take this cube here, I can show you just quickly. If I fold it into this, it's a hex. I fold it in half and have this. So this is the same pair of foureyes that share one corner. One edge, sorry, not corner. Okay, that's that. And if I take off the bobby pin of that and unfold it, it's a hex. Okay, so it's 1 hex, a dozen bobby pins. Let's see how many hexes this is in total. I already said, but never mind. Here is 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 hexes, yes? It's a full hex. There's nothing done to it. I mean, okay, this one has a hole in the middle and a rip because it's getting old. It's the same story with all my models. They wear and tear. But this is what you can do. You get paper and draw out a hex. How do you do that? You take a compass, if you have it, draw a circle, and take the same radius, put it on the circumference of the circle, and do another 6 steps around the circle. That way you grow all the corners, all the intersections where the circles meet. That's where you draw the connections between that make the hex. Cut out the hex. You can do it with a circle as well. This can be done with a circle just as well, but it's nice with the hex. You take 4 of these hexes, you fold them diagonally, like so, 3 directions, and then you pick 2 opposing corners, corners, like so, fold them towards one another, and that's where you add the bobby pin here, and you get your bow tie. Think of the Extinction Rebellion. I wish they knew about the vector equilibrium. Maybe they would know a bit of a way out of the misery. Here is a second. Here is the same procedure, fold it into the bow tie, add a bobby pin. So repeat again, bow tie, bobby pin, and one last time, bow tie, bobby pin. And now we take these, let's take 2 of those. I put them together like this, and I'll just use another bobby pin to connect them both. So the bobby pins go following the radii of my vector equilibrium, right? They point in to the center of it. Like so, like so. And here is half of it. Right? Incidentally, Am I sidetracking? I am sidetracking because why not? This so-called Merkaba, I do have two halves of it somewhere. Ah, never mind. This is next time. We're doing this now. I've got this. I can show the thing I wanted to show with this also. I'm going to take the other two bow ties and add them together just as I did with the first two. So bobby pin, oop, and one more. And really bobby pins are the way to go with this. When I read this the first time in Synergetics, I was like, what is a bobby pin? So I looked it up. Okay, Haarnadel. And I never got around to get them. I tried this with other ways, but this is really the easiest way. So if you can get them, do yourself a favor. Okay, so we have two halves of it now, right? Now, if I put these two together like this, here is the so-called Merkaba, what I call the 2 dozen around 8eyes. If I put them together this way, it's the vector equilibrium. Right, so there's a connection between those two. And whenever you want to, we can take a closer look into that. I'm just gonna go with this and connect these last bobby pins in. And once they're all there, this is a beautiful, beautiful vector equilibrium. And I think if I was to just, you know, as a fantasy, science fiction, have a trichia, you know, a place like IKEA, but everything made of triangles. This would be my expedit. This would be I would sell people cardboard hexes where the triangles are connected by, I don't know, perhaps fabric or something. So you can fold them, and then you can fold them into this and just connect these corners, and you got the structure. And you know what? When you have boxes and containers and things that follow the same pattern, you're going to be surprised, but they just fit. You know, you can just put them there and they go well, and that's really beautiful. So yeah, that's to say, long story short again, while the Platonic solids throw together apples and pears and say constructs and structures are the same thing, which they aren't, it also goes to ignore the role of the vector equilibrium, because this is 4 hexes and there's nothing done to them. They're just folded. Their integrity is safe, you know, they're good. And Bucky would also say that if you think of this as the trajectory of like an electron around an atom, it could go boop, it would hit another here, would be deflected. The angular constant keeps it going in this pattern, in this figure 8 pattern, where it seems like the symbol of infinity is that loop, you know, where it goes across. But really, in this case, it wouldn't even cross. It would just meet, boop, and go refract, boop, boop, go around that pattern. And then you would have 4 of these to go all around this whole thing. And perhaps there's 8 of them, and then we have the exterior shell of the atom accounted for with its 8 electrons. Anyways, that's a lot. But I would love you to try your hands on this, because it's really a beautiful thing and so simple, so simple. And you know, I do think if we hadn't had the privilege of being introduced and indoctrinated by the geometry of the Greek flavor, but instead we would have lived in a world where the stuff that Bucky spoke of was common sense, as it very well should be, I think, then rather than having this category of the Platonic solids, that arbitrary throwing together polygons and polyhedra, we would be familiar with the jitterbug or dance of the Tao as the embracing within the vector equilibrium, which again is also we can talk about that next time. It's the geometry of zero. Within this structure of space-time, we already have all the other structures accounted for. The foureyes, the eighteyes, and the dozeneighteyes are all evidently members of this transformation that this thing is doing, right? So rather than having 5 arbitrary Platonic solids, now we have a family of spheres. We have a foureyes here. We have the eighteyes, and I hope I can just conjure up one of them here. Yeah, perfect. We have the foureyes, we have the eighteyes, we have the dozeneighteyes, which we've just grown together today, and we have the 2 dozeneighteyes, the vector equilibrium. And between these 4, that's the whole of all, you know, it's all within them already. And to me personally, this whole thing, oh no, I spilled my mate tea. Now I'm gonna have a bad Struppi, don't spill your mate tea. But that's because Joe is already falling asleep over there. No, don't worry, it's all good. I'm gonna get to a point now. I'm just saying, knowing these 4 as a family, being intimately familiar with their being, you know, their existence, their interactions, their intertransformations, and all of that jazz, I think enables a way of being in kinship with universe and with the earth and everyone, you know, kinship earth and everyone beyond that, which we cannot get to as long as we stay in Plato's cave, being fooled by the Platonic solids and that really rigid and lifeless set of ideas and concepts that are evidently divergent from what we would find if we followed along evidence-based experiential geometry as synergetics does, where our lines are the connections, not divisions, you know, and planes are triangular, not square, and volume is accounted for in foureyes and quantum rather than non-existent ghost cubes.
Very good.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you would like to add?
Jeannie has.
Thank you, Struppi. I think maybe somebody has shown me that place where this one is in the jitterbug, but I never got it. I mean, your explanation, I don't know. I never saw it before. Now I really see it. Thank you.
That's great. And just for, you know, for the sake of completeness, so to speak, where is it? Let me pick up this. Last time around, you know, we grew those eighteyes, and
some of us did. Some of us did.
Some of us did. And in the sub-frequency of the fingers, where the eighteyes, where we do a dozen beats, but it's just a single beat for every finger. It looks like this, right? And in this case, I put a number 13, a number dozen and 1 in the middle between these dozen. So this is the exact shape of the vector equilibrium if we look at its spheres. Yes? This is the dozen around 1 sphere. And I don't know if that model is it's the best I have right now. There's more here, but they're buried in their kin. And here, for reference, this is the dozeneighteyes. This is a dozen spheres around none. There's no nucleus in this, no room for it. But just as I put in those 6 additional fingers in the jitterbug earlier, That's the same that happened here. Because there is no nucleus, these 12 spheres could get ever so slightly closer together than they can with the nucleus. And when they do, they triangulate as such. So this is the closest drawn spheres, the dozen around none, that is the equivalent to the thing we've grown today. And I think that's good to show as well. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah. But I'm happy that you could connect those things, because yeah, that's really why I love this model so much, because it just allows for all the transformations without any imagination necessary. Like there's no I used to, before I had this, when I was explaining these connections, I would tell people, yeah, and then you just put 6 more in there and then it becomes that. And to me, it was clear, you know, I had all the hands-on experience to know what I was talking about was so, but I hadn't had a model yet that could do it. And that makes all the difference in the world, right? Because the moment in telling the stories of the spheres, explaining any of these things is good. You know, I've got all the models here, I can do everything that goes well. And then comes the moment where I don't have that particular model. And I go into that. To me, it's okay to go there. I have the experience behind it. I can tell from that experience. But unless my counterpart has the same experience, I ask them to imagine something. And that may be okay if we're already in the imagining thing, as with geometry in general, that's all imaginary and abstract. Then, you know, imagining another thing is okay. But if we're in this experiential part of the universe, you know, going through the models, and then all of a sudden I kind of ask someone to imagine something, I can kind of see their eyes go whoop, like they just turn off, and for a second the spell is broken, so to speak, because I ask of them something that all this time they hadn't had to do. So I can just say, with that as a background, having this in particular, this model specifically, has been a game changer in getting across what this is about, right? So yeah. Whoop. Anyone else? Any words before we close the session? I don't know how long it was this time around, but I feel more awake when we've started. DLJ.
Coming up to 4 hours.
Wow, only
So-
just.
Yeah.
That's a 1 hour.
Time for a bike
every-
ride. Time for a
Yeah,
bike
it's a
ride
little warm.
on this side of the world.
It's a little warm out here, so yeah.
I think we
my
failed if we
room.
could make it to 6. The 6 seems to be the
But that's
Okay.
funny, you know, if you allow me to reach over here, try a little overreach and grab yet another model from my bag full of things. Here, this one. Ha! Because we've grown this today, yes, one of these. What happens if I take 4 of them and grow them together? Here's a foureyes from 4 of these dozeneighteyes. See? And let's just say we've got 1 hour full of for every one of these. I think that's a good
Bye, Struppi. Bye.
goodbye.
You see what it is?
Not quite. Straws? No, chopsticks?
Like the stirs.
The stairs. Oh, that's true.
Our next project, the next,
Next
time.
time.
The next
Yeah,
time.
next time. To have something simple for the next time. But yes, we again, you know,
I
this
hope
is
to get to the weaving next time.
yeah. Let's do that. Perhaps to begin with next time, and after that we can still perhaps try the structure, because I think it's gonna be very informative, instructive to find out more about how we apply this pattern to grow the various membranes. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And again, if anyone has any questions, you can always reach me. I'm on, Instagram and YouTube and these things as Struppi Pol. You can also write me a message, a mail, Struppi, just as it here, at hackeno, hackeno.de. Okay, that was German, that doesn't help you. I'm gonna put it in the chat just in case. And if anyone wants to play anymore, has any questions or whatever it is, I'm here and I'm eager to help, happy to help as well. Ah, wonderful. Yeah, the YouTube links are great. There's lots of those by now and more to come. Whenever I'm alone and have nobody to talk to, I just talk to myself and hope someone listens in the end. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. It's really been a pleasure and super exciting to know that this is something we're sharing between us, and we're growing this body of knowledge between us, because this is a new common sense. It truly is common, but it's still in its infancy in terms of our common sharing of that sense, getting that sense to be something that is just clear to everyone. And I know that that is a world that I want to live in, so I do anything and everything I can to make that more and more of a reality. And I'm so incredibly grateful for all of you and this whole enterprise, this whole project of the Living Ideas being open and conducive to this, to really grow this among us. I think this seems little and trivial along the way, but it's such a deep shift and a deep shift and change. It takes time, and as it does, it takes heart, and it's giving heart too. And we're growing something that is gonna be way bigger than any one of us. So I'm looking forward to the day when we reconvene to consider the conventions of old, reconsider whether they are still sensible and reasonable and rational, as they're called, and perhaps get to a new conclusion, and from there on out have a very different frame of mind to wrap around the intricacies of kinship Earth and universe and see where that gets us, following along Naga. Well, yeah, I'm not gonna get too close. Joe, may you want to close this off?
Sure. I'll just get started with some of our upcoming events. Tomorrow, we have Poetry Mondays, and that'll be hosted by Maritza. On Tuesday, we'll be covering Khalil Gibran. And on Wednesday, I believe Phil will be back with a new topic. We don't know what topic that will be at this point in time. And on Thursday, we'll have Seneca's letters. So, and on Friday, I don't think anything has been scheduled as of yet, but we'll have to, just keep an eye out for it. So, but I appreciate it, Struppi, for your time and your patience and your understanding. It's been, it's been a very fortunate for all of us because I think that what you do is bring a lot of these structures and ideas to life. So I think that that's something that is critical when we're talking about making Bucky's ideas real and mainstream. So we really appreciate the role you play here and the knowledge that you bring.
In my patience.
So
Lots of patience.
exactly, and you do it with joy. So, all right, everybody, have a wonderful rest of your Sundays.
Yeah. See you soon.
Bye, guys. Enjoy the
Take
day.
care.
Thanks, Struppi.
Take care.